Chapter 30-40. At the same time, Qin Feiyang knocked on the door of the mermaid princess and Zhuo Xiaoxian as he walked towards the courtyard of the lunatic. The lunatic also saw Qin Feiyang and walked out of the courtyard. Hence, the two of them stood together and looked at the back view of the two women in puzzlement. "Senior brother, what is going on?" Qin Feiyang was puzzled. "I want to ask you the same question." The lunatic rolled his eyes. "There is a problem." Qin Feiyang mumbled. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang seemed to have noticed something. He looked toward the tea garden on the left and saw Wang Xiaojia and the other two hiding in the tea garden furtively. He did not know what they were mumbling about. "These three lads must know something," Qin Feiyang muttered. The lunatic looked at the three of them and shouted, "All of you, get over here right now." The three of them were slightly stunned and looked toward Qin Feiyang and Zhuo Xiaoxian. Wang Xiaojia asked suspiciously, "Uncle Master, are you talking to us? What do you think?" The lunatic stared at him with ill intentions. The three of them looked at each other and immediately ran toward their own courtyard. "Indeed, you have a guilty conscience." The lunatic sneered and took a step forward. He grabbed the three of them and returned to Qin Feiyang's side. "Tell me, what do you know?" Qin Feiyang said. "What and what? We don't know anything." Wang Xiaojia shook his head quickly. Qin Feiyang looked at Qin Chen. Qin Chen lowered his head to hide the panic on his face. "It seems that if I don't use my true strength, I won't be able to get you to speak the truth." The lunatic rolled up his sleeves, rubbed his palms and laughed. Don't. I'll talk. Wang Xiaojia waved his hands quickly and said with a bitter expression, "This is your wife's idea." Qin Feiyang and the lunatic looked at each other and asked suspiciously, "What do you mean?" "It means that," Wang Xiaojia gritted his teeth and looked at Qin Feiyang. "Your wife wants to matchmake Uncle Master Lunatic and Zhuo Xiaoxian." Ugh! Qin Feiyang and Qin Feng were dumbfounded. Madman continued, "So you're saying that she was the one who ordered you to come here and cause trouble?" "Yes." Wang Xiaojia nodded and hurriedly explained, "Mistress is also kind. Seeing that you have been alone for so many years, she wants to find a woman to take care of you." The madman's face was dark as he glared at Qin Feiyang. "Tell me honestly, did you participate?" "I swear to God, I didn't," Qin Feiyang said hurriedly. "Really?" Madman's face was full of disbelief. "Really?" Qin Feiyang smiled wryly and said, "Maybe it's because I joked last time that I was creating an opportunity for you." So, the speaker didn't mean it, but the listener took it seriously. Nonsense. Madman was speechless. "Martial uncle, mistress's foresight is not bad. Since she wants to matchmake you two, it means that this Zhuo Xiaoxian must be a good woman. Why don't you just give in?" Wang Xiaojia chuckled. "Piss off." Madman's face was immediately filled with anger. "I was waiting for you to say that. Alright, you two have a good chat. We'll leave right away." Wang Xiaojia snickered and immediately called Long Tianyu and Qin Chen to flee. "You little brat." Qin Feiyang laughed and looked at the mermaid princess and Zhuo Xiaoxian again. He chuckled and said, "Senior brother, why don't you give in?" "Give in my ass." Madman glared at Qin Feiyang in annoyance before returning to his courtyard to continue eating. "To be honest, I'm also quite anxious about your marriage." Qin Feiyang followed him and said with a smile, "I'm not in the mood to think about that now. I just want to figure out the mystery of my birth." Madman shook his head. "If you're not in the mood to think about it, then why are you talking to me?" Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes. He sniffed the remaining dishes on the table and said in surprise, "This smells good." "You don't say." "I'm a little surprised about this. Tell me, how can a rich young lady like her be so good at cooking?" Madman was curious. Don't you know how to ask her? Qin Feiyang was speechless. I did, but she didn't say. She only said that she likes to cook. She also said that only by eating with her family at the dining table can she feel like a family. She also said that she likes this place very much. I really don't understand. Madman shook his head. She really said that? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Yes. Madman nodded. Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and said with a smile, it seems that she doesn't have a good life at home. She likes this place because it's peaceful and quiet. You mean that there's a lot of scheming in her family? Madman was suspicious. Any rich family like her can't avoid scheming. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. It seems that she has a story too. Madman muttered. I guess there are a lot of stories. Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled. Outside. In this half a month, Wind City could be said to be extremely lively. The death of Wang Hui and Wang Feng had spread. The entire city lord's mansion was looking for Qin Feiyang and Madman. The one who publicized this matter was naturally Su Yuan. Because at that time, he saw Wang Hui and his son being killed with his own eyes. As for the old ancestor of the Su family, he had really given up on revenge and had been reminding Su Yuan. Su Yuan agreed verbally, but he didn't care in his heart. At the same time, Wind Sea City. City Lord's mansion, in the main hall. Elder Yu hurriedly entered the main hall, looked at Zhuo Tiansheng above, and said with a smile, Lord, I have found the whereabouts of these two people. Where? Zhuo Tiansheng suddenly stood up, and a cold light surged in his eyes. Cloud Sea City. Elder Yu smiled. They really are quite bold. They actually dared to head to Ocean of Cloud City openly. Zhuo Tiansheng was surprised. Not only that, they also opened a restaurant called Heavenly Joy Building in Cloud Sea City. Today is the official opening day. Earlier, the guards of the city lord's estate unintentionally passed by Heavenly Joy Building. As soon as they saw them, they immediately sent a voice transmission to me. Elder Yu smiled. Opening? That's a good thing. I'll personally go congratulate them. Zhuo Tiansheng laughed coldly, and then he activated a legendary altar and walked up it. Elder Yu followed behind him. Cloud Sea City. As one of the largest cities in the eastern continent, it was equally famous as Wind Sea City, and its scale was exactly the same as Wind Sea City. On a certain street in the city, the sound of gongs and drums resounded, and crowds of people were piled up into mountains. It was extremely bustling. Surprisingly, there was an ancient-style restaurant at the side. Everything was brand new, and it was covered in red flowers and filled with joy. At the entrance of the restaurant, a group of attendants stood side by side hurriedly. A man and a woman were standing right in front of them. The man wore a fitting black robe, had a tall figure, and an extraordinary appearance. The woman was tall, wore a white dress that was purer than snow, and her face was covered by a veil that covered her face below her eyes. However, it wasn't difficult to discern that she was a peerless beauty through her lively eyes and tender skin. That's right. The two of them were Yun Xiang and the Tower Master of Tianyue Tower. Today is the opening day of Tianyue Tower. All the dishes are 50% off, and we've also prepared the supreme-grade wine, Drunken Immortal, for everyone to taste for free. If you're satisfied, I hope that everyone will visit us more often in the future. Yun Xiang looked at the crowd in front of him and laughed heartily. Drunken Immortal? Is it really a supreme-grade wine? Someone immediately asked. How can it be fake? You'll know once you try it. Yun Xiang smiled. Alright, I'll go try it. Me too. Many people rushed into Tianyue Tower. Welcome the guests. With Yun Xiang's shout, the attendants standing at the entrance immediately got busy. The woman looked at the customers entering Tianyue Tower, and a smile appeared on her face. She looked at Yun Xiang and said, "Big brother Yun, thank you. If it weren't for your help, I wouldn't have been able to take care of everything in just half a month by myself." "It's nothing. Don't worry about it." Yun Xiang waved his hand, and then said, "But from now on, don't play the zither anymore, lest you cause criticism." "Okay." The woman nodded, then pondered for a while, and said worriedly, "I wonder how they are now." "Them?" Yun Xiang was stunned. The woman said, "Qin Dage and Big Brother Mo." Yun Xiang smiled and said, "Heaven helps the good. Don't worry about them. After all, they helped me. How can I not worry?" The woman shook her head. Yun Xiang's eyes flashed slightly, and he said with a smile, "All right, hurry up and greet the guests." "Okay." The woman nodded. "Get out of the way." But at this moment, a cold shout came from behind the crowd. Everyone turned around and their pupils immediately shrank. They saw a group of guards walking over. Behind the guards, there was a middle-aged man and a red-haired old man. "It's the guards of the city lord mansion. What are they doing here?" "Wait. That middle-aged man seems a little familiar. I remember now. He's the deputy city lord of Wind Sea City, Zhuo Tiansheng. Why is he here at Tianyue Tower?" Everyone retreated to the side. Yun Xiang and the woman looked at each other. There was a trace of suspicion in their eyes, and then they hurriedly went forward. "I didn't expect Lord Zhuo of Wind Sea City to come to my Tianyue Tower in person. This is really an honor for my Tianyue Tower. Quickly come in," Yun Xiang said with a smile. Zhuo Tiansheng looked at the two of them and said, "What are your names?" "Yun Xiang." Yun Xiang smiled, then pointed at the woman, hesitated, and said, "This is my little sister." "Then do you know them?" Zhuo Tiansheng waved his hand, and Qin Feiyang and the madman's phantoms immediately appeared. The two of them were surprised. "I'm asking you, do you know them?" A guard shouted impatiently. Yes, we've met once." Yun Xiang quickly nodded. "Just once?" A cold light flashed in Zhuo Tiansheng's eyes. Yun Xiang's heart trembled, and he asked suspiciously, "May I ask, what do you mean by that?" "Follow me." Zhuo Tiansheng didn't answer and directly opened an altar. "Where are we going?" Yun Xiang and the woman looked at Zhuo Tiansheng suspiciously. The guard shouted, "If I tell you to go, then go. Why are you talking so much nonsense? Brother Yun, they don't seem to have good intentions." The woman transmitted her voice. "It's okay." Yun Xiang comforted and said with a smile, "Little sister, I'll go with Lord Zhuo. You take care of the restaurant." "She's going too?" Zhuo Tiansheng said. "She's going too?" Yun Xiang frowned. "Yes." Zhuo Tiansheng nodded. "No, Lord Zhuo, what did we do wrong?" Yun Xiang looked at Zhuo Tiansheng with a puzzled face. Boom. But what answered him was a terrifying pressure. Zhuo Tiansheng looked at the two with a gloomy face and said, "I don't want to say it again." Good. Yun Xiang nodded, walked to a waiter, and said a few words. Then, he brought the woman to Zhuo Tiansheng's side. Elder Yu waved his hand and opened an altar. Zhuo Tiansheng looked at the guards and said with a smile, "Tell the two city lords that I thank them for their help. After I'm done with the matter at hand, I'll personally come and thank them." "Okay. Lord Zhuo, take care." The guards nodded and bowed to send him off. "Let's go." Zhuo Tiansheng glanced at Yun Xiang and stepped on the altar. Yun Xiang and the woman looked at each other and silently walked up. Elder Yu followed closely behind, and the four of them quickly disappeared. Chapter 30-41. Wind Sea City. The city lord's mansion. When he brought Yun Xiang and the woman back to the main hall, Zhuo Tiansheng sat on the chair above and looked down at them. Elder Yu stood beside the two of them, not saying a word. Yun Xiang looked at Zhuo Tiansheng suspiciously and asked, "My lord, what's going on?" "Don't you know what's going on?" Zhuo Tiansheng said gloomily. Yun Xiang and the woman looked at each other and said, "We really don't know, please tell us." Zhuo Tiansheng looked at the two, and his expression became more and more gloomy. Suddenly, he looked at Elder Yu beside him. Elder Yu immediately made a move and slapped at their Qi Ocean. "What are you doing?" Yun Xiang was always vigilant. When he saw Elder Yu's move, he immediately retreated with the woman. "Humph!" Elder Yu snorted and rushed forward like lightning, directly slapping on their Qi Ocean. Accompanied by a miserable groan, their Qi Ocean shattered on the spot. "Lord Zhuo, Yun Xiang glared at Zhuo Tiansheng. The woman's eyes were also filled with anger. "Shut him up," Zhuo Tiansheng said. Elder Yu immediately released his aura and firmly restrained the two. Immediately after, Zhuo Tiansheng took out the divine voice stone. Black Tortoise World. In the attic. Qin Feiyang looked at the mermaid princess and asked suspiciously, "Why do you really want to matchmake Zhuo Xiaoxian and Frenzy?" "Zhuo Xiaoxian is a good girl. It's Frenzy's fortune to be able to marry her," Mermaid Princess said. "How do you know she's a good girl?" Qin Feiyang looked at her in shock. "I've often chatted with her over the years, so I naturally have some understanding of her personality. And I also know about her family's situation." Mermaid Princess smiled. "What's the situation?" Qin Feiyang was puzzled. Although she's deeply doted on by Zhuo Tiansheng in the Zhuo family, it's also because of this that her dozen or so half-brothers are very uncomfortable. They even tried to find opportunities to get rid of her many times. She knows all of this, but because she cares too much about her family and kinship, she has never told her father. She has been enduring it silently. She hopes that one day, she can use this sincerity to move them. That's why she said she liked it here. Because here, she didn't see any scheming or scheming. "We're not a family, but we're better than a family." The mermaid princess sighed. "I see." Qin Feiyang nodded, then frowned and said, "But she is Zhuo Tiansheng's daughter." "So what? As long as the two of them find each other pleasing to the eye, this is not a problem." The mermaid princess shook her head. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "Why do I feel that you have the aptitude to be a matchmaker?" "I'm just thinking for senior brother Crazy. He's been alone for so many years. How pitiful. Actually, you should know that Madman also yearns for a relationship." The mermaid princess said. "Yes. His adoptive father died early, so he only has the first elder as his family. And the first elder is busy with the affairs of the Nine Heavens Palace, so it's hard for him to take care of Madman. That's why he's so reclusive." Qin Feiyang nodded. "So, as long as there's even the slightest possibility, we have to help him. I've also asked around. Zhuo Xiaoxian seems to have a good impression of Madman." The mermaid princess smiled. "It can't be. With Madman's attitude, how can a woman have a good impression of him?" Qin Feiyang was shocked. He couldn't believe it even if he was beaten to death. "It's true. Although Madman always has a fierce attitude, she told me that she can see that Madman's heart is not bad." The mermaid princess said. "Then her eyesight is not bad. Senior brother Crazy is a person who is cold on the outside but warm on the inside." Qin Feiyang smiled. After being together for so many years, how could he not understand Madman? He looked cold on the outside, but his heart was filled with justice. He was also very loyal to his friends. For example, him. During those years in the ancient world, he took care of him a lot. Later, when he fought with the dragons, he also sacrificed himself. It could be said that Madman was the person he admired the most. It was just that this matter was a bit difficult to solve. First of all, Madman's attitude towards Zhuo Xiaoxian. Did he have this intention? Then, there was Zhuo Tiansheng. Even if Madman and Zhuo Xiaoxian had a good impression of each other, Zhuo Tiansheng would not agree. Buzz. Suddenly, the divine sound transmission stone rang. Qin Feiyang came back to his senses. He shook his head and muttered, "There's no sign of anything happening yet. Why am I thinking so much?" Then he took out the divine sound transmission stone and checked it. He was slightly stunned. "What's wrong?" The mermaid princess looked at him suspiciously. "Zhuo Tiansheng," Qin Feiyang said. "He found the alchemy fire and furnace so quickly?" The mermaid princess was surprised. After all, he is the deputy city lord of Wind Sea City. Qin Feiyang smiled and activated the divine sound transmission stone. Zhuo Tiansheng's shadow immediately appeared. "Lord Zhuo, I've been waiting for you for a long time." Qin Feiyang laughed. Yun Xiang and Zhuo Xiaoxian were standing below, so Qin Feiyang did not see them. "I've also been waiting for a long time." Zhuo Tiansheng said coldly, "Come to the city lord's mansion." "City lord's mansion?" Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned and shook his head. "I don't dare. The city lord's mansion is your territory. If I go there, wouldn't I be walking into a trap? I didn't expect there to be something you're afraid of." Zhuo Tiansheng sneered. "That's for sure. Come to my place to trade." Qin Feiyang gave Zhuo Tiansheng a coordinate and turned off the divine sound transmission stone. "It can't be a trap." The mermaid princess was a little worried. "I'll be careful." Qin Feiyang smiled and left the ancient castle, standing alone in the sky above the mountain range. Time passed breath by breath. About 100 breaths later. Whoosh! Two figures suddenly appeared in the void in front of him. It was Zhuo Tiansheng and Elder Yu. Qin Feiyang looked at Elder Yu and his pupils shrank slightly. This was another terrifying sovereign realm expert. Moreover, the aura he emitted was not much weaker than Zhuo Tiansheng's. "Where's Xian Er?" Zhuo Tiansheng glanced at the space around Qin Feiyang and frowned. "Did you bring the things I wanted?" Qin Feiyang did not answer, but asked instead. Zhuo Tiansheng smiled coldly and said, "Compared to the things you want, I think there are two people you're more interested in." Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. Was there really a trap? Zhuo Tiansheng looked at Elder Yu, who nodded and smiled. He raised his old arm and waved gently. Yun Xiang and Zhuo Xiaoxian appeared beside Elder Yu. Qin Feiyang looked at the two of them in surprise. Yun Xiang sighed and said, "Brother Qin, we've really been put in a lot of trouble by you this time." The woman's eyes were also filled with a bitter smile. She had never thought that Zhuo Tiansheng would capture them because of this person. Qin Feiyang turned to look at Zhuo Tiansheng and frowned. "What do you mean? Isn't it simple? A person exchange." Zhuo Tiansheng said. "You mean to exchange them for Zhuo Xiaoxian?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. "Yes." Zhuo Tiansheng nodded and said with a smile, 2 for 1. "It's a good deal." Qin Feiyang was stunned. "What? Do you think this bargaining chip is not enough?" Zhuo Tiansheng looked at him mockingly. "Wait," Qin Feiyang promptly raised his hand to stop Zhuo Tiansheng, who was immensely proud of himself, and said, "Before you did this, did you inquire about my relationship with them?" "Of course I did." "Your companions," Zhuo Tiansheng said. "Companions?" Qin Feiyang looked at Zhuo Tiansheng in amazement and asked, "Who did you ask?" "Su Yuan," Zhuo Tiansheng said. "Su Yuan? Qin Feiyang was taken aback. The patriarch of the Su family. It was also because of him that I was able to find these two people. Zhuo Tianqing sneered. So it's him. Then I'm laughing. Su Yuan has only seen me once. You actually believe his words? Qin Feiyang shook his head, his face full of ridicule. Zhuo Tianqing and Elder Yu looked at each other, and a trace of surprise crept into their eyes. I might as well tell you the truth. I only met them in Tianyue building. Let alone companions, we're not even friends. So the bargaining chip you think is worthless in my eyes. Qin Feiyang laughed. This, Zhuo Tianqing was stunned. Elder Yu said, Lord, don't worry. Maybe he's just pretending to be calm. Zhuo Tianqing's eyes flashed, and he looked at Qin Feiyang and said in a deep voice, You really don't care? Do as you wish. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Good. Zhuo Tianqing nodded, and a trace of hostility crept up between his eyebrows. He shouted, Elder Yu, kill Yun Xiang for me. Elder Yu immediately sent a palm strike towards Yun Xiang's head. Qin Feiyang didn't have any waves. Because he and Yun Xiang had only met once, and there was no relationship between them. Brother Qin, you can't be so heartless. Although we've only met for the second time, there's a good saying that saving a life is better than building a 7-floor pagoda. Yun Xiang couldn't stay calm and hurriedly looked at Qin Feiyang. Do I look like such a kind person to you? Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Yes. Yun Xiang nodded firmly. Qin Feiyang laughed and shook his head, We're all adults, so naive. Finished. Qin Feiyang looked at Zhuo Tianqing and Elder Yu, and said faintly, I won't hinder you, goodbye. Then he disappeared without a trace. This, Elder Yu's arm stiffened. Zhuo Tianqing's whole person also froze there. He really didn't care at all. See, do you believe this? We're not familiar with him at all. Yun Xiang was helpless. Elder Yu glanced at Yun Xiang, looked at Zhuo Tianqing, and said with a wry smile, Lord, it seems that we were wrong. This damn Su Yuan is simply wasting my time. Zhuo Tianqing suddenly burned with anger. Cough cough. Yun Xiang coughed, looked at Zhuo Tianqing and asked, Lord Zhuo, can you let us go now? We still have to go back and greet the guests. Zhuo Tianqing looked at the two of them coldly, and his eyes suddenly flashed with killing intent, since you have no value, then why keep you? Kill them for me. Elder Yu raised his arm again. At the same time. Black Tortoise Realm. Qin Feiyang stood in the air, looking at the scene in front of him. Frenzy, Zhuo Xiaoxian, and the mermaid princess were also standing beside him. Qin Dage, do you want me to go out and talk to father? Zhuo Xiaoxian asked carefully. Shut up. Frenzy glared at her, and then looked at Yun Xiang without blinking. Qin Feiyang ignored Zhuo Xiaoxian, and his eyes were fixed on Yun Xiang. Sister-in-law, seeing this, Zhuo Xiaoxian couldn't help but look at the mermaid princess for help. Don't worry. Yun Xiang is not a simple person, so Feiyang and Frenzy want to take advantage of this opportunity to see how deep this Yun Xiang is hiding. The mermaid princess comforted in a soft voice. I see. Zhuo Xiaoxian came to a realization, and then looked at Yun Xiang curiously. Chapter 30-42. Outside. Yun Xiang was extremely anxious. Brother Qin, are you really that heartless? The woman's face was also deathly pale. She had never thought that she would encounter such an unexpected disaster. At this point, Zhuo Tianqing and Elder Yu finally completely believed that these two people really didn't have a deep relationship with Qin Feiyang. But it was also because of this that they were even more angry. After wasting so much time, they only managed to catch two useless people. To them, killing one or two nameless pawns was like a joke. So, they didn't care about killing the innocent at all, as long as they could vent the anger in their hearts. Elder Yu's palm fell, and Yun Xiang and the woman were in imminent danger. But at this moment, Yun Xiang shook his head and sighed helplessly. It seems that we can only save ourselves. The woman looked suspiciously at Yun Xiang. Yun Xiang suddenly raised his head, a trace of contempt flashing in his eyes, and a terrifying murderous aura suddenly appeared from his body. What? Elder Yu was shocked and hurriedly retreated without hesitation. Because he actually felt the threat of death from this murderous aura. Zhuo Tiansheng was also shocked. What was going on? But that murderous aura was like a flash in the pan, disappearing in an instant. Yun Xiang tidied up his somewhat messy clothes, and there was no longer any trace of panic on his face. He looked incomparably calm and composed. Brother Yun, the woman was even more surprised. At this moment, in her eyes, Yun Xiang was like a vast ocean, mysterious and unfathomable. Don't be afraid. Yun Xiang smiled slightly, looking at Zhuo Tiansheng and Elder Yu. I didn't want to be so high-profile, but you two are so insensible. Their pupils contracted. Yun Xiang smiled. Tell me, how do you want to die? Although he was smiling, his smile caused one to tremble with fear. Who exactly are you? Zhuo Tiansheng said gloomily. That's not important. What's important is, how do you want to die? Yun Xiang was still smiling, but it made Zhuo Tiansheng and Zhuo Tiansheng's hair stand on end. It was as if a devil was hiding under that smiling face. Zhuo Tiansheng and the other two swallowed their saliva. Whoosh! Suddenly, the two of them turned around at the same time, took a step forward, and flew into the air. Escape? Yun Xiang chuckled and raised a finger. That murderous aura reappeared, turning into two strands that pierced through Elder Yu and Zhuo Tiansheng's bellies like strands of hair. An arrow of blood shot out. The two of them were shocked. What kind of method was this? The Black Tortoise whirled. Qin Feiyang and the madman were also shocked. They knew that Yun Xiang was definitely hiding something, but they didn't expect it to be so terrifying. One had to know. Zhuo Tiansheng and Zhuo Tiansheng were both late-stage sovereigns. But at this moment, he was actually being crushed by Yun Xiang without any strength to fight back. So strong? Zhuo Xiaoxian was also shocked. She quickly looked at Qin Feiyang and said, Qin Dage, let me out, or father will die. Can you solve the problem if you go out? Qin Feiyang said indifferently. Zhuo Xiaoxian roared, but I can't watch father be killed. Outside. Zhuo Tiansheng and Zhuo Tiansheng stopped in the air, not daring to escape. They looked at Yun Xiang in horror. There was also a trace of fear in the woman's eyes. She didn't expect Yun Xiang to be so strong. Whoosh! Accompanied by the sound of breaking air, the two strands of murderous aura returned to Yun Xiang's body. Then, he looked at the two of them and smiled. Have you decided? How do you want to die? Zhuo Tiansheng and Zhuo Tiansheng looked at each other and quickly bowed. Sorry, we have eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. Please be magnanimous. Don't say such useless things. Don't challenge my patience. Yun Xiang shook his head. The two of them were terrified to the extreme and hated Su Yuan to the extreme. What kind of rotten idea was this? Not only did they fail to save Zhuo Xiaoxian, but they also provoked such a terrifying existence. You don't want to say it, right? Then I'll destroy your souls. Yun Xiang smiled slightly. Whoosh! At this moment, three figures appeared. They were Qin Feiyang, lunatic, and Zhuo Xiaoxian. Don't kill my father. Zhuo Xiaoxian immediately ran to Zhuo Tiansheng and stood in front of him, looking at Yun Xiang and begging. Xian, Zhuo Tiansheng was overjoyed. He asked, "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. Qin Dage and the others didn't hurt me. Instead, they took good care of me." Zhuo Xiaoxian shook her head. Zhuo Tiansheng couldn't help but look at Qin Feiyang and Lunatic. Then he shuddered and quickly stood in front of Zhuo Xiaoxian, protecting her behind him. From this action, it could be seen that he really loved this daughter of his. Even if his Sea of Qi was destroyed, he still wanted to protect his daughter. Yun Xiang looked at Qin Feiyang and Lunatic. He said, "I thought you guys had already left. If we were leaving, would we be able to watch this show?" Lunatic chuckled. Yun Xiang was startled. He said with a smile, "From what you're saying, it seems you already knew I was hiding something. We're both sensible people. Why are you still pretending? Tell me, who are you? More specifically, what's your intention for approaching us?" Lunatic said. "Approaching you?" Yun Xiang looked at the two in shock. He said, "We've only met by chance. Besides, you're not important people. Why would I approach you? Is that really so?" Lunatic sneered. "Of course. I thought we could be friends, but I didn't expect you to be so heartless. Looks like I'm not worthy of being your friend." Yun Xiang shook his head and sighed. Lunatic said, "It's us who are not worthy of being your friend." Yun Xiang smiled and said, "Let's deal with business first." Hearing this, Elder Yu and Zhuo Tiansheng's eyes trembled. The so-called business was definitely referring to them. As expected, Yun Xiang suddenly waved his hand, and that murderous aura appeared again, charging towards Zhuo Tiansheng. "Xian, hurry up and leave!" Zhuo Tiansheng roared. However, not only did Zhuo Xiaoxian not leave, she even took a step in front of Zhuo Tiansheng. "Xian, Zhuo Tiansheng roared. "Father, hurry up and leave!" Zhuo Xiaoxian said without turning her head. "How touching!" Yun Xiang chuckled. "Humph!" But at this time, Lunatic snorted coldly. As a golden light appeared, a halberd appeared. Heaven-defying divine art. Yun Xiang and the woman looked at Lunatic in surprise. He actually mastered a heaven-defying divine art. Clang! Lunatic grabbed the halberd and slashed at the murderous aura. "Senior brother, no!" Qin Feiyang's expression changed slightly as he shouted. Even Elder Yu and Zhuo Tiansheng couldn't resist that murderous aura, let alone Lunatic. Even a heaven-defying divine art would be no match for it. However, Lunatic turned a deaf ear to it. In an instant, the halberd collided with the murderous aura, and with a crack, the halberd shattered. Lunatic was immediately sent flying, and blood spurted out of his mouth. That huge force almost tore his body into pieces. "Lunatic!" Zhuo Xiaoxian exclaimed and rushed forward. "Get lost!" Lunatic stepped into the air and forcefully stabilized his body. His aura rushed out and sent Zhuo Xiaoxian flying. Then, he looked at Yun Xiang and laughed. "So this is not your ability. It's just a murderous aura." "Murderous aura?" Qin Feiyang was stunned and quickly looked at the murderous aura. Upon closer inspection, the aura emitted by the murderous aura was indeed different from Yun Xiang's. In other words, this murderous aura should be formed by the murderous aura of a certain expert to protect Yun Xiang. And Yun Xiang's strength was the same as what they had seen. He was still at the half-step invincible realm. However, even so, it was still a bit shocking. A murderous aura could make Zhuo Tiansheng and Zhuo Xiaoxian unable to fight back. Then how terrifying was the cultivation of the owner of this murderous aura? And from this point, it could be seen that Yun Xiang's identity was really not simple. Could it be, did this person really intend to approach them? If that was the case, then Yun Xiang must have already known their origins. A murderous aura also appeared in Qin Feiyang's eyes. Yun Xiang chuckled and said, "Brother Mo, you have good eyesight, but even if it's a murderous aura, it's not something you can fight against. Those who look down on me usually pay a heavy price." Lunatic laughed, and the space between his eyebrows suddenly split open, revealing a third blood eye. Yun Xiang and the woman looked at the blood eye. Innate supernatural power, open. Lunatic smiled coldly. The two's bodies immediately began to petrify. The two of them were shocked. Elder Yu, Zhuo Tiansheng, and Zhuo Xiaoxian were also shocked. They were all behind Lunatic, so they didn't see his blood eye. But even so, they still felt a chill. Especially Zhuo Xiaoxian, her cultivation was the weakest. Even if she didn't see the blood eye with her own eyes, she couldn't help but feel a sense of despair. However, just as Yun Xiang and the woman were completely petrified, the murderous aura suddenly attacked Lunatic's blood eye. "Old Qin, kill Yun Xiang!" Lunatic shouted. Qin Feiyang took a step forward and slapped at Yun Xiang. At this moment, Yun Xiang's body was almost petrified, and only his soul was left. And even his soul was about to be petrified. He wanted to dodge the incoming Qin Feiyang, but his petrified body couldn't move. And he was shocked to find that after his body was petrified, it was like a cage, and his soul couldn't escape from his sea of consciousness. At the critical moment, the murderous aura turned in the air, exuding a monstrous aura, and forcibly cut off Lunatic's petrification. Immediately after, the murderous aura took Yun Xiang and the woman away, disappearing from their sight in the blink of an eye. Escaped? Lunatic was stunned. Qin Feiyang was also surprised. Logically speaking, the murderous aura was more than enough to deal with them, so why did it escape? Could it be because it sensed the existence of the ancient castle? However, it wasn't that easy for the murderous aura to kill them. Because they could enter the Black Tortoise realm. Although Yun Xiang controlled the laws of space and time, with the ancient castle guarding, even an expert like Elder Hai couldn't break into the Black Tortoise realm, let alone Yun Xiang. Whoosh! At the same time, Zhuo Tiansheng and Elder Yu looked at each other and heaved a sigh of relief. Zhuo Xiaoxian asked for a divine life pill from Zhuo Tiansheng and ran to Lunatic, saying, "Thank you, take it." Lunatic closed his blood eye and glanced at Zhuo Xiaoxian, saying, "Don't misunderstand, I didn't attack him to save you, but because he has designs on us. How can you be so ungrateful? Aren't I using it to heal you?" Zhuo Xiaoxian looked at Lunatic angrily. "No need, I have my own." Lunatic took out a divine life pill and threw it into his mouth. Zhuo Xiaoxian stomped her feet in anger. "What's going on?" Zhuo Tiansheng and Elder Yu couldn't help but look at each other when they saw this scene. Logically speaking, shouldn't Xiaoxian hate them? After all, they were the ones who kidnapped her. But why was she so concerned about them now? Chapter 30-43. Qin Feiyang looked at Zhuo Tiansheng and said with a smile, "Master Zhuo, let's talk about our business." Zhuo Tiansheng's eyes darkened. "Even though we kidnapped your daughter, did you see any injuries on her body? We're quite sincere, aren't we? But what about you? What did you do?" Qin Feiyang's eyes glittered coldly as his divine might surged and restrained Zhuo Xiaoxian. "Don't." Zhuo Tiansheng was extremely anxious. "Brother Qin, it's not that we don't want to be honest, but it's too difficult to find a 10th level divine grade cauldron. There's nothing we can do." Old man Yu hurriedly explained. Yes. Such cauldrons are usually in the hands of the famous alchemy masters. They're either protected by a powerful force, or they're very strong themselves. If you want a 9th level divine grade cauldron, I can think of a way, but a 10th level one? There's nothing I can do. Zhuo Tiansheng nodded in agreement. Is it that difficult? Qin Feiyang frowned. He thought it wouldn't be difficult to find a 10th level divine grade cauldron as long as he put his mind to it. But after hearing what they said, he felt that it was even rarer than a rare treasure. Why don't you let Xiaoxian go first and I'll try my best to help you. Don't worry, I won't play any tricks this time. After all, old man you and I would have been killed by Yun Xiang if you didn't show up. I'm not a good person, but I won't bite the hand that feeds me. Zhuo Tiansheng hurriedly said. Qin Feiyang thought for a while and said to Madman, Senior brother Madman, what do you think? You can decide. Why are you asking me? Madman was speechless. Qin Feiyang frowned. To be honest, he couldn't trust Zhuo Tiansheng at all. I'm not going back. Suddenly, Zhuo Xiaoxian said. What? Zhuo Tiansheng and old man, you were stunned. Qin Feiyang and Madman also looked at her in shock. Not going back? Was there something wrong with this woman's brain? Xiaoxian, what did you say? Why not? Zhuo Tiansheng had a suspicious look on his face, seriously wondering if there was something wrong with his ears. It's already been more than 10,000 years, and you're only thinking of saving me now. I can see that you don't care about me at all, so why should I go back? Zhuo Xiaoxian snorted coldly. When Qin Feiyang and the madman heard this, they immediately had a bad feeling. Sure enough, what he was worried about was discovered. Over 10,000 years? Zhuo Tiansheng and Elder Yu looked at each other, their faces also full of astonishment. Xiaoxian, were you abused by them? Elder Yu asked. Abuse? Zhuo Xiaoxian paused briefly, then said angrily, they didn't abuse me. If they did, how could I still be standing here unharmed? Then why are you so confused? It's only been half a month, how could it be more than 10,000 years? Elder Yu was speechless. Half a month? Zhuo Xiaoxian was surprised. How could it only be half a month? It was clearly more than 10,000 years. It's really only been half a month. Don't you know your father? In father's house, you are father's life. You were kidnapped by them, how could I not be anxious? Zhuo Tiansheng sighed. It's really only been half a month. Zhuo Xiaoxian muttered. But why had more than 10,000 years passed in the Black Tortoise world? Could it be, she wasn't stupid? And as Zhuo Tiansheng's daughter, she was someone who had seen the world. She immediately thought of the time array. Could it be that there was a time array in the Black Tortoise world that lasted a day and 1,000 years? Half a month had passed outside, it seemed to be exactly 15,000 years in the Black Tortoise world. It was really a time array that lasted a day and 1,000 years? Her heart was filled with disbelief. Just who were these people? They actually had such a terrifying time array. In the sky cloud world, there were many time arrays that lasted a day, a few years, a few decades, a few centuries. Just like her city lord mansion, there was a time array. However, this was the first time she had heard of a time array that lasted a day and 1,000 years. Perhaps only the 4 super forces had this kind of time array. Damned woman, what should be said, what shouldn't be said, it's best to know your limits. Madman suddenly transmitted his voice. Hearing this, Zhuo Xiaoxian immediately puffed up her cheeks and snorted, if you dare to bully me, I'll tell others. You're courting death. Killing intent flashed in Madman's eyes. Zhuo Xiaoxian's delicate body trembled, and a trace of fear crept onto her face. Brother, let's talk nicely. Seeing this, Zhuo Tiansheng hurriedly looked at Madman and said. Although he didn't know what was going on, he definitely couldn't let his daughter be in danger. Madman glanced at Zhuo Tiansheng, then looked at Zhuo Xiaoxian and said, how troublesome, get lost with your father. Zhuo Tiansheng was overjoyed and hurriedly said, daughter, come home with me. No. Zhuo Xiaoxian shook her head. Why? Did they give you some kind of bewitching potion? Zhuo Tianxing frowned. What was going on? But Zhuo Xiaoxian ignored Zhuo Tianxing and even treated him as heir. She looked directly at Madman and said unhappily, "You want me to go back, but I won't." The corner of Madman's mouth twitched. This woman was indeed sick. When Qin Feiyang saw this scene, there was a faintly discernible smile on his face. Although he was also an idiot in the eyes of others, as someone who had experienced it, he could be considered to have some experience. From Zhuo Xiaoxian's current behavior, it wasn't hard to see that she did have a good impression of Madman. At the same time, looking at Madman and Zhuo Xiaoxian who were staring at each other, Elder Yu said, "City Lord, I think something is wrong." Yes, something is wrong, but what exactly is wrong? Zhuo Tianxing mumbled. He wasn't blind, so he could naturally see the situation between the two. But, what was going on? As an experienced person, can't you see it? They're obviously quarreling like a young couple. Elder Yu was speechless. What? Zhuo Tianxing was stunned and quickly said in his heart, "No way. See for yourself." Elder Yu was helpless. Zhuo Tianxing looked at the two of them, and after a closer look, it seemed to be true. How could they have feelings for each other? Wasn't this nonsense? This kind of thing couldn't be done. One had to know. These two were robbers, and they were the ones who killed Wang Hui. As a member of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance, although Wang Hui wasn't an important person, the higher-ups of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance would investigate this matter sooner or later. If this precious daughter of his was really related to these two, not only would she be implicated, but the entire Zhuo family would be implicated. Xiaoxian, can you come back with me first? Everyone is worried about you, you can't let them worry about you all the time. Zhuo Tianxing said. Worried about me? Zhuo Xiaoxian was slightly startled, and said in a suspicious tone, "Who else is worried about me apart from you?" "Your brothers, and your aunts." Zhuo Tianxing said with a smile. "They're worried about me?" Zhuo Xiaoxian was startled. "What are you talking about? They're your family, of course they're worried about you when you're in trouble." Zhuo Tianxing looked at Zhuo Xiaoxian unhappily. Zhuo Xiaoxian fell silent, with a hint of self-mockery in her eyes. Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered. It seemed like Zhuo Tianxing had no idea that Zhuo Xiaoxian was being ostracized in the Zhuo family. All of a sudden, Qin Feiyang looked at Zhuo Xiaoxian and said with a smile, "You should go back." "Qin Dage, even you dare to ask me to leave?" Zhuo Xiaoxian immediately felt helpless. She had gotten used to living a carefree life in the Black Tortoise realm for 15,000 years. She really did not want to go back. The reason being that her heart was filled with disgust whenever she thought of the scheming in her family. "We can't afford to keep idlers here." Qin Feiyang shook his head. Zhuo Xiaoxian immediately felt wronged. It turned out that even these people despised her. Maniac took out a cosmos ring and tossed it to Zhuo Xiaoxian. He then glanced at Zhuo Tianxing and waved his hand impatiently, "Take her and leave at once." The cosmos ring belonged to Zhuo Xiaoxian. Maniac had been keeping it safe. He had taken it away to prevent Zhuo Xiaoxian from leaking the situation in the Black Tortoise realm to the people outside. Sure. Zhuo Tianxing was overjoyed. He immediately went forward with old Yu and brought Zhuo Xiaoxian away. "Don't forget what you promised us." Qin Feiyang reminded him. "I'll try my best." Zhuo Tianxing nodded. Soon, the three of them disappeared without a trace. Qin Feiyang glanced at Maniac and teased, "Senior brother Maniac, are you really willing to let her go?" "What do you mean by that?" "As if I really want her to stay." Maniac raised his eyebrows. "Ha!" Qin Feiyang laughed dryly and brought Maniac into the Black Tortoise realm. It's quiet now. Finally, I can calm my heart and cultivate. Maniac laughed heartlessly and flew towards the courtyard. Can I really calm down? Qin Feiyang looked at Maniac's back with a playful smile. Are you really letting Xiaoxian go? Mermaid Princess walked to Qin Feiyang's side and asked suspiciously. Yes. She doesn't want to leave yet. Qin Feiyang nodded. Mermaid Princess was stunned and asked in confusion, then why did you let her go? You don't understand. Right now, the two of them are not sure if they really like each other in their hearts. If they still get along like before, I don't know how long they will have to wait before they can clearly recognize their own hearts. That's why I want them to temporarily separate. Because after separating, they won't be able to see each other, and the true thoughts in their hearts will slowly appear. Qin Feiyang chuckled. So that's how it is. Mermaid Princess nodded in realization, then covered her mouth and laughed. You are so good at dealing with other people's feelings, but when it came to me, you were like a block of wood? Qin Feiyang was stunned, then his face darkened. He picked up the Mermaid Princess and laughed evilly. Smelly girl, you dare to laugh at me, see how I'll deal with you today. With that, he carried the Mermaid Princess and rushed into the attic, closing the door with a bang. For a moment, the room was filled with boundless spring scenery. Wind Sea City. City Lord's Mansion. In a hall. Xiaoxian, you're finally back. We've been worried sick these days. Now that you're fine, we can finally let out a sigh of relief. How are you? Did they hurt you? Let us take a look, it's only been half a month, and you seem to have lost weight. More than 10 young men surrounded Zhuo Xiaoxian, their faces full of concern and joy. On the side, Zhuo Tiansheng and Elder Yu were all smiles when they saw this scene. However, Zhuo Xiaoxian was disgusted by these hypocritical faces. Chapter 30-44. That's enough. Your sister just came back. She must be tired. Let her rest. Zhuo Tiansheng waved his hand and smiled. Okay. Have a good rest, Xiaoxian. We'll come to see you another day. We'll take you out for a walk then. The group of young men smiled and left together. However, as soon as they walked out of the hall, their expressions changed. I didn't expect her to come back alive. Humph, she can't even kill a woman, and she wants to be a kidnapper? What a piece of trash. She's lucky this time. The group of young men discussed in secret as they walked away. Zhuo Xiaoxian looked at the backs of the group of young men and couldn't help but think of the time in the Black Tortoise realm. Everyone living together happily, without scheming against each other, without ambition or desire. That was the kind of life she yearned for. Zhuo Xiaoxian sighed inwardly. She looked at Zhuo Tiansheng and said, Father, I'm tired. I'll go back first. Go, go. Zhuo Tiansheng waved his hand. Zhuo Xiaoxian turned and walked out of the hall, gradually disappearing at the end of a quiet path. Elder Yu frowned and said, My lord, something's wrong with Xiaoxian. Yes. She looks absent-minded. I wonder what happened to her in the past half a month. Zhuo Tiansheng's face was full of worry. Half a month, Elder Yu murmured, his eyes shining. He said in a low voice, My lord, what did Xiaoxian mean when she said that? What did she say? Zhuo Tiansheng was suspicious. Elder Yu said, she said more than 10,000 years. Zhuo Tiansheng was slightly stunned. He frowned and said, She must be confused. Elder Yu said, But do you think Xiaoxian looks confused now? Well, Zhuo Tiansheng frowned and asked, What do you think? If Xiaoxian didn't lie, then I think their spatial divine item must have a time array. Elder Yu said in a deep voice. A time array. Zhuo Tiansheng's eyes trembled. Xiaoxian said more than 10,000 years had passed, but only half a month had passed in the outside world. What does that mean? It means that if there's a time array, it's still 1,000 years. Even in the entire sky cloud realm, such a time formation is rare. I think the identities of these two people are definitely not simple. Old man, you said. At first, Zhuo Tiansheng hadn't paid much attention to it, but when he heard Elder Yu's words, he was shocked. If Elder Yu's guess was correct, then these two people really did have a great background. He pondered for a moment. Zhuo Tiansheng said in a low voice, "Go and investigate the background of these two people immediately." Yes. Elder Yu nodded, then asked, "Then what about the pill fire and pill furnace?" Zhuo Tiansheng pondered for a moment before sighing, "After all, he saved our lives. Let's try to find him one. If we really can't find it, we'll just give him a 9th grade divine grade pill furnace as a token of our gratitude." Understood. Old man, you nodded. Also, make the Su family disappear from this world. Zhuo Tiansheng's eyes flashed with killing intent. If it wasn't for Su Yuan's bad idea, would they almost fall in the hands of Yun Ziang? He wasn't a good person to begin with, so he couldn't tolerate this kind of thing. Got it. I'll do it right away. A murderous glint flashed across Elder Yu's eyes as he activated an altar and left. Old Zhuo, quickly come and see me. Suddenly, a voice full of energy and with a sense of majesty sounded in Zhuo Tiansheng's mind. Zhuo Tiansheng's gaze trembled as he hurriedly walked out of the hall and flew towards the most magnificent palace in the center of the city lord's mansion. Soon, Zhuo Tiansheng landed in front of the palace gate. "Come in." The voice came from the main hall. Zhuo Tiansheng pushed open the door of the main hall and saw a middle-aged man in his 30s sitting on the throne at the top of the main hall. This person was about 1.8 meters tall and wore a purple python robe. His body was neither fat nor thin, but he was very muscular. As he sat there, he was like a divine king, full of majesty. "Greetings, city lord." Zhuo Tiansheng walked to the middle-aged man and bowed. That's right. This person was the city lord of Wind Sea City. Zhuo Tiansheng, the vice city lord, did not dare to be rash in front of this person. "Sit." The city lord pointed to the seat beside him. Zhuo Tiansheng nodded, walked over, sat on the seat, and said with a smile, "City lord, aren't you in seclusion? Why did you come out? Did you break through? It's not that easy to become a perfected dominator." The city lord shook his head. From his words, one could tell that this city lord was a terrifying perfected dominator. "Then why did you come out?" Zhuo Tiansheng looked at him doubtfully. "I just received a message from the vice leader, saying that something happened in Wind City under our jurisdiction." "Do you know about it?" the city lord asked. Zhuo Tiansheng's heart trembled. The higher-ups had indeed started investigating this matter. He did not dare to hide anything and nodded, "I know." "Then how did Wang Hui die?" The city lord frowned. "He was killed by 2 young men. One of them is surnamed Qin, and the other is surnamed Mo. Both of them are somewhat arrogant. To tell you the truth, my daughter Xian was also kidnapped by them some time ago. It was only just now that I managed to rescue her." Zhuo Tiansheng sighed. "What? There's such a thing? Why didn't you tell me about such a big matter?" A trace of anger appeared between the city lord's brows. "It's not a big matter, why should I tell you? Besides, isn't Xian fine now?" Zhuo Tiansheng smiled faintly. "No matter what, Xian is my adopted daughter. If she's in danger, how can I just sit back and watch? If something like this happens again in the future, don't hide it from me. Although Xian is only my adopted daughter, I treat her as my own. My love for her is no less than that of you, her biological father." The city lord looked displeased. "Yes, yes, yes." Zhuo Tiansheng hurriedly smiled apologetically. Then who are these two young men? They even dared to kidnap Xian. They don't know that Xian is your daughter? The city lord frowned. They know. It's because Xian is my daughter that they kidnapped her. Zhuo Tiansheng smiled bitterly and did not hide anything. He told the city lord the whole situation in detail. This included the time array that they suspected. I see. The city lord nodded and shook his head with a smile, controlling Wang Hui, possessing a high-grade heaven-defying divine artifact, and possibly a time array that lasts 1,000 years. It seems that these two young men are not simple. That's why I've already asked Elder Yu to investigate their identities. I hope we can find something. Zhuo Tiansheng said. The city lord asked, then how did the grudge between him and Wang Hui arise? Wang Hui told me about this. It seems that his son, Wang Feng, caused trouble in a restaurant called Tianyue Restaurant. Coincidentally, the two of them were also drinking in Tianyue Restaurant. Hence, the two of them found each other an eyesore, so they killed the people around Wang Feng. Later, Wang Hui appeared and wanted to take down the two of them. However, in the end, he fell into their hands. Zhuo Tiansheng shook his head. This is what a hedonistic son is like. When you have the time, you should also discipline your sons. They are not like Xian. Xian has been obedient and sensible since she was young. She has never caused trouble and is filial to us. As for those brats, they are all arrogant and domineering. If you don't discipline them, sooner or later, they will bring disaster to you. The city lord warned. Okay. Zhuo Tiansheng nodded. No matter what, you have to give the higher-ups an explanation for this matter. Ask Elder Yu to investigate quickly. Investigate it thoroughly and tell me immediately. I'll make the next plan. The city lord said. Zhuo Tiansheng asked, what about the alchemy fire and alchemy furnace that he wanted? I haven't settled the score with them for kidnapping Xian. They still want these things? Dream on. Also, that Yun Xiang, you have to investigate as well. With such a terrifying killing intent, his identity is definitely not simple. The city lord said. Okay. Zhuo Tiansheng nodded. Then you go and do your work. I'll go and see Xian. She must be very sad after suffering such a huge insult. The city lord smiled slightly. Sad? Zhuo Tiansheng shook his head and smiled bitterly. You don't know. I don't know what happened to Xian. She actually doesn't want to come back with us. What? The city lord looked at Zhuo Tiansheng in astonishment. She didn't want to come back. This was strange. Elder Yu guessed that Xian, and that brat surnamed Mo, speaking of this. Zhuo Tiansheng couldn't help but frown, looking somewhat unwilling to say. Say it. The city lord urged. We are considered family, so I won't hide it from you. Elder Yu guessed that Xian, might have, feelings for him. Zhuo Tiansheng sighed. This, the city lord was stunned. What was this? A kidnapper, a kidnapped person, how could she have feelings for him? That's what I'm worried about. Look at these two people. They killed Wang Hui, so the higher-ups definitely won't let this go. If the higher-ups know that Xian has such a relationship with them, not only Xian, even I will be finished. Zhuo Tiansheng looked worried. Don't be nervous. This is just Elder Yu's guess. The city lord comforted. It's not just Elder Yu's guess. You didn't see Xian's attitude when she interacted with him at that time. It felt like a couple quarreling in a fit of pique. Zhuo Tiansheng rubbed his forehead. There was an indescribable irritation in his heart. Then we really can't be careless about this matter. The city lord pondered for a while and said, how about this? I'll go and talk to Xian. You should hurry up and investigate their identities. As long as they aren't from the Devil Palace, there's still room for negotiation. Zhuo Tiansheng nodded and got up. Then I'll go and do my work first. After saying that, he turned around and left quickly. The city lord was silent for a while before he also got up and disappeared without a trace with a step. On the other side, beside a quiet lake, there was an elegant small building. At this moment, a woman in a purple dress sat alone by the lakeside. Her bare feet swayed in the water, creating ripples in the water. The woman was Zhuo Xiaoxian. She looked at the clear lake, her eyes in a daze. No one knew what she was thinking. Chapter 30-45. Whoosh! Suddenly, the city lord landed in front of the building without making a sound. His eyes were filled with affection as he looked at Zhuo Xiaoxian, who was sitting by the lake. However, he did not say anything. He walked to Zhuo Xiaoxian's side and watched in silence. Zhuo Xiaoxian did not notice the city lord's arrival. Time gradually passed. The city lord couldn't help but stare blankly. What was this girl thinking? Not only did she not notice his arrival, she did not even make a sound. Cough cough. The city lord could not help but let out a dry cough. He thought Zhuo Xiaoxian would be startled, but to his surprise, Zhuo Xiaoxian acted as if she did not hear it. She was still swinging her feet while staring at the lake with a blurred look. The city lord was frustrated. He let out a dry cough. Ah, Zhuo Xiaoxian was finally awakened. She immediately turned around and looked at the city lord. She was startled at first, but she quickly rose to her feet and said, "Godfather, why are you here?" "I've been here for a long time," the city lord said with a straight face. This, Zhuo Xiaoxian's expression stiffened. She said with an embarrassed smile, "I'm sorry, I was lost in my thoughts. Godfather is very angry now." The city lord harumphed coldly. Zhuo Xiaoxian immediately went up and hugged the city lord's arm. She giggled, "Godfather, I'm sorry." "You little girl," the city lord shook his head helplessly and said with a smile, "Then tell me, what are you thinking about?" This, Zhuo Xiaoxian stammered. Her face blushed. Who was the city lord? He had seen countless people. He immediately knew what Zhuo Xiaoxian was thinking after seeing her reaction. It seemed like Zhuo Tiansheng was right. "Little girl. How's the kid with the surname Mo?" The city lord thought for a moment and asked. Zhuo Xiaoxian was caught off guard. "He's the one you're thinking about," the city lord said. Zhuo Xiaoxian's face turned even redder. She shook her head and said, "I'm not thinking about anyone." Still trying to deny it. The city lord rolled his eyes and said with a smile, "Actually, I don't care who you like as long as he treats you well. However, there's one thing you must remember." "What?" Zhuo Xiaoxian looked at the city lord in confusion. "The other party must have a good character. Also, he must stand on the side of our rogue cultivator alliance," the city lord said. Zhuo Xiaoxian asked, "What if he's not from the rogue cultivator alliance?" "Admit it. You are indeed thinking about that Mo brat." The city lord smiled smugly. "You," Zhuo Xiaoxian paused for a second, then angrily turned around and snorted coldly, "I don't want to talk to you anymore. How dare you set me up? If foster father didn't do this, would you have told the truth?" The city lord chuckled and asked, "Then tell foster father, do you really like him?" "I don't know." Zhou Xiaoxian shook her head. "Why don't you know?" The city lord had a suspicious look on his face. "I don't know if I like her or not," Zhuo Xiaoxian mumbled. The city lord pondered for a moment and asked, "How do you feel now that you're separated from him?" "I'm a little disappointed." Zhuo Xiaoxian pondered for a moment and said. The city lord could not help but sigh in his heart. If this wasn't love, then what was? It was just that these feelings were not too deep, so he could not be sure. Then tell foster father, what kind of person is he? The city lord asked with a smile. He's very fierce. He always has a fierce look on his face, as if he's a bad guy. However, I can tell that he's actually a very kind person. And I learned from sister-in-law that he's a very righteous person. Zhuo Xiaoxian could not help but wear a smile on her face as she spoke. Seeing this smile, the city lord was even more certain that this girl had fallen in love with him. Sister-in-law? The city lord was startled. Sister-in-law is Qin Deja's wife. They are very loving. There are a lot of people there. Some are Qin Deja's subordinates, and some are Qin Deja's family. There's also a bunch of cute beasts. However, whether it's his subordinates or those beasts, they're like a family, living in harmony. Zhuo Xiaoxian could not help but smile as she spoke. Her eyes were filled with yearning. I see. It seems like those young people are quite nice. The city lord nodded. That's why I don't want to come back. I like the atmosphere there. Even though I've been a captive all these years, they've treated me like a friend. Zhuo Xiaoxian lowered her head and said. The city lord was startled. You don't like the atmosphere in the city lord's mansion? Zhuo Xiaoxian was about to say that she did not like it, but she suddenly corrected herself. I like it, I like it. How perceptive was the city lord? He could easily see Zhuo Xiaoxian's hesitation. He frowned and said, Girl, are you hiding something from us? Nothing. Zhuo Xiaoxian waved her hand and asked, Foster father, why did you come out of seclusion? It's because of them. The city lord shook his head. Them? Zhuo Xiaoxian was startled. Her expression changed as she said, Foster father, are you going to kill them? Don't be nervous, the higher-ups only asked me to investigate the matter. They haven't made a decision yet. The city lord waved his hand with a smile. That's good. Foster father, they're not bad people. Take Wang Hui's incident for example. Wang Hui was the one who provoked them first. It's the same if they kidnapped me. They came to kidnap me because father was going to kill them. Zhuo Xiaoxian let out a relieved sigh and spoke up for Qin Feiyang and the others. The city lord asked, what about the incident where they used you to extort the pill flame and the cauldron? They're still holding a grudge after all. If it were you, you would definitely take the opportunity to ask for something as compensation. Zhuo Xiaoxian said. Ugh. The city lord was stunned and said speechlessly, if you're already speaking up for them, what will happen when you marry them? Who's going to marry them? Zhuo Xiaoxian blushed and mumbled. You silly girl. Don't worry, as long as they're not from the demon palace, I'll be able to deal with them. The city lord smiled. Thank you, foster father. Zhuo Xiaoxian immediately expressed her gratitude. You're thanking me? It seems like you're the outsider now. The city lord shook his head and let out a sigh with a sad look. No, no. Zhuo Xiaoxian immediately waved her hand. I'm just kidding. The city lord scratched her little nose and said with a smile, then tell me, how many years have you been inside the godly object? This. Zhuo Xiaoxian was slightly hesitant. What's wrong? You can't even tell foster father? The city lord looked at her unhappily. No, no, no. Zhuo Xiaoxian shook her head. She glanced at her surroundings and said in a low voice, I'll tell you, but please don't tell father and elder you. Why? The city lord was suspicious. Because father and elder you are a little greedy. Zhuo Xiaoxian stuck out her tongue. Ugh. The city lord was startled. Before he scolded jokingly, you silly girl, is that how you talk about your father? It's the truth. Zhuo Xiaoxian giggled. The city lord asked curiously, then, what kind of person is foster father in your heart? Foster father. Of course it's a straightforward, magnanimous, respectable, wise, and brilliant man. Zhuo Xiaoxian said proudly. Cough cough. The city lord immediately let out a cough and said with a chuckle, don't tell the truth, keep a low profile. All right. Zhuo Xiaoxian nodded. You silly girl. The city lord rubbed Zhuo Xiaoxian's head in a doting manner. This little girl was so adorable. He said, all right, I promise you, I won't tell them. I'm sure, I've lived in the Black Tortoise world for 15,000 years. Zhuo Xiaoxian said softly. His space godly object is called the Black Tortoise world? The city lord was startled. Zhuo Xiaoxian nodded. 15,000 years. It's only been half a month outside. It's indeed a time formation that lasts 1,000 years in a day. The city lord exclaimed. Impressive, right? I didn't even know that after living in the Black Tortoise world for so many years. Zhuo Xiaoxian said. Impressive. No wonder you fell in love with that kid. We've lived together for over 10,000 years. The city lord shook his head with a smile. Foster father. Zhuo Xiaoxian blushed as she glared at the city lord. The city lord let out a smile and said, all right, let's not talk about it anymore. Come, foster father will accompany you. By the way, that Qin Dage, what's his real name? Qin Feiyang. What about that kid with the surname Mo? His surname is Mo, everyone calls him Little Madman. Little Madman? You actually fell in love with a crazy person, girl, what are you thinking? He's not crazy, it's just that his personality is a little cynical. See, you're speaking up for him again, and you're still saying that you don't like him? Foster father. At the same time. Tianfeng City. The Su family. Su Yuan was very happy, and he would drink a few cups from time to time. Husband, what good thing have you encountered? I've never seen you so happy before. The woman looked at Su Yuan suspiciously. Madam, our Su family is about to soar. Su Yuan chuckled. Is that so? The woman had a look of disbelief. Really, when have I ever lied to you? Just you wait, it won't be long before our Su family moves to Wind Sea City to develop. Su Yuan said. Wind Sea City? The woman was slightly stunned and touched Su Yuan's forehead. What are you doing? Su Yuan slapped the woman's arm away in dissatisfaction. You don't have a fever, why are you talking nonsense? The woman muttered. Get lost, you have a fever. Su Yuan glared at the woman in annoyance, and then laughed alone. The woman shook her head and was about to turn and leave. Swish! But at this moment, in the sky, a red-haired old man suddenly appeared. Su Yuan looked up, and a trace of joy appeared on his face. He hurriedly greeted him and said with a smile, Elder Yu, I've been waiting for you for a long time. The woman looked at Elder Yu suspiciously. Who was this? However, without saying a word, Elder Yu's eyes surged with killing intent, and he slammed his palm towards the Su family. Elder Yu, what are you doing? Su Yuan's expression suddenly changed. The Su family's undead stage experts also came out of seclusion and looked at Elder Yu in the sky in surprise. But Elder Yu did not explain. His divine power surged out and instantly blasted into the Su family. Boom! Immediately, accompanied by billowing smoke, the entire Su family was razed to the ground. Not a single person from the Su family was left alive. All of them had died, including the Su family's ancestor. Even when they died, they didn't know what was going on. Chapter 3046. The speed of the Su family also alarmed the entire Tianfeng city. The current Tianfeng city could be said to be without a leader. Because after Wang Hui's death, the Rogue Cultivator Alliance had not sent a new city lord. So, even if such a big thing happened to the Su family, no one came out to care. Of course, no one dared to come out to care. Even the Su family could be razed to the ground with a wave of his hand. One could imagine how strong this red-haired old man was. Who dared to recklessly run to him to settle the score? Elder Yu did not leave immediately, scanning the people in the city below, because he still had to investigate the situation of Qin Feiyang and the others. Black Tortoise World. Everything was as usual. After Qin Feiyang and the Mermaid Princess were affectionate, he began to cultivate in seclusion. Lunatic also wanted to cultivate in seclusion. However, no matter what, he could not calm down, feeling empty in his heart. What's going on? This made him very irritable. Sometimes, he would stroll around here, and sometimes he would walk around there, trying to relax. But this irritation did not ease. Instead, it became more and more intense. The Mermaid Princess had been paying attention to Lunatic's abnormality, and could not help but laugh in her heart. Sure enough, he was also an emotional idiot. He still did not understand. In fact, a seed had already been planted in his heart. It was just that he did not realize it. Or he had already realized it, but he did not want to admit it. Time flew. Outside, 2 days had passed. 2,000 years had passed in the Black Tortoise world. I've really had enough, on this day. Lunatic's roar resounded in the Devil's Land, instantly waking everyone up. What's the situation? Everyone walked out one after another, looking at Lunatic's courtyard suspiciously. What are you looking at? Lunatic walked out, glared at everyone, and left alone. This little lunatic, is he sick? Qin Rushuang raised her eyebrows. Is he sick, or is he lovesick? The Mermaid Princess laughed. Lovesick? Qin Rushuang was slightly stunned, and asked curiously, you mean him and Zhuo Xiaoxian? Yes. The Mermaid Princess nodded. Qin Rushuang was suddenly happy. This heartless guy would actually be troubled by love? Late at night. Madman ran back, reeking of alcohol. He ran straight to Fire Lotus's loft. When Fire Lotus was awakened from her seclusion, she was stunned to see the madman standing in front of her. What are you looking at? Madman sat on the ground. Fire Lotus was surprised. You ran out this morning just to drink? Can't I? Madman snorted. Sure, I didn't say no. Besides, you've reached the age of love. Fire Lotus smiled. You still have the nerve to talk about me? As the palace master of the Nine Heavens Palace, you're still alone. Aren't you afraid that you'll become a leftover woman and no one will want you in the future? Madman pursed his lips. Fire Lotus's face darkened. She grabbed Madman's ear and said angrily, what did you say? I dare you to say it again. With your fierce look, no one would dare to accept you even if you offered yourself to them. Madman's face was full of disdain. In any case, he was like a dead pig that wasn't afraid of boiling water. The veins on Fire Lotus's forehead popped out. Madman said impatiently, I don't want to talk nonsense with you. Send me out. Fire Lotus was stunned. She let go of Madman's ear and smiled. You're going to find Zhuo Xiaoxian? No, I just want to go out and vent. I'm feeling suffocated. Madman shook his head in panic. Still not admitting it? Fire Lotus secretly mocked him and shook her head. Go find Qin Dage. Why do I have to find him? Can't you enter and exit the Black Tortoise world freely? Madman frowned. I can enter and exit the Black Tortoise world freely, but I can't act on my own, right? Qin Dage is the master of the Black Tortoise world. I have to get his permission. Fire Lotus said. Madman's mouth twitched. He said helplessly, can you take it as me begging you? Begging? Shouldn't you have the attitude of begging? Fire Lotus said calmly. Good, good, good. Palace Master's old leftover daughter, no, no, no. Palace Master, I beg you, is that okay? Madman got up helplessly and weakly bowed 3 times to Fire Lotus. Fire Lotus rolled her eyes at him and said, I can send you out, but don't go cause trouble. I know, long-winded. Luckily you're not my mother, otherwise I would have already collapsed. Madman pouted. I don't have a son as useless as you. Fire Lotus glared at him. With a wave of her hand, Madman disappeared. You call me a good-for-nothing? 10,000 years old leftover daughter, destined to be unwanted. Madman stood outside in the night sky. He snorted and flew towards Wind City. Su Yuan, come out and die. Not long after. A roar filled with killing intent resounded in the sky above Tianfeng City. Who is it? So arrogant? Everyone was given a fright and hurriedly ran out to look. They saw Madman standing in the air above the city. It turned out to be him. No wonder he dares to be so arrogant. Everyone suddenly realized. Madman swept over the Su family and was ready to vent. Because it was Su Yuan who made things difficult for Zhuo Tiansheng to find Yun Xiang. Although this matter did not cause any loss to them, Su Yuan's mind was not pure. So, he planned to kill Su Yuan. But when he landed in the sky, looking at the devastated Su family, his whole person suddenly froze. What happened? How did a good Su family become like this? Don't you know? 2 days ago, a red-haired old man appeared and destroyed the Su family with a palm. Someone on the street below spoke. Red-haired old man? Madman was slightly stunned, and the figure of old Yu immediately appeared in his mind. He then asked, what about the people of Su family? They were all killed. Not one left. It's terrible. People on the street were full of horror. Sure enough. Madman muttered. There was no suspense. This must be Zhuo Tiansheng's idea. Exterminating the Su family was even more ruthless than them. Looking at the messy Su family, Madman shook his head and turned away. Su family also reaped what they sowed, so there was no sympathy. Clang. However, at this moment, in the ruins below, a sword light suddenly emerged, cutting through the sky like lightning, heading towards Madman. A cold light flashed in Madman's eyes, and he turned his head and directly slapped the sword light. The sword light shattered on the spot. Just a supreme artifact, you want to sneak attack me? Madman looked down with disdain and saw a black-clothed youth walk out of the dark ruins. He held a long sword that flashed with cold light. Isn't he Su Hua? When did he come back? The people on the nearby streets, seeing someone sneak attack Madman, also rose into the air. When they saw the young man in black, they immediately began to discuss. Su Hua. What is that? Madman was taken aback. Cough. He is not a thing, he is a person. He is the young master of the Su family, and he is also a disciple of the Demon Palace. He is quite talented. It is said that his cultivation has almost caught up to the old ancestor of the Su family. Someone said. I see. Madman nodded, he seemed to have heard of such a person from Su Yang. I want to kill you. Su Hua stepped into the air and stared at Madman coldly. Kill me? Madman was taken aback and speechless. The person who destroyed your Su family is that old thing called Elder Yu. Why do you want to kill me? I have been hiding in Tianfeng City for the past 2 days and heard a lot of things. This matter must be related to you. Die. Su Hua charged forward, the long sword in his hand carried a monstrous sharpness as he slashed towards Madman. Let's not talk about whether it is related to me or not, you want to kill me with your strength? Keep dreaming. Madman smiled in disdain and grabbed the long sword. Su Hua's pupils constricted. Since you have heard about it, don't you know that my body is comparable to a supreme-level divine artifact? Madman kicked Su Hua's lower abdomen. Roar! Accompanied by a pig-like wail, Su Hua immediately flew out horizontally, blood spurting out of his mouth. Strong! The surrounding people were all shocked when they saw this scene. Su Hua had the cultivation of the perfect undead realm, but in the hands of this person, he couldn't resist at all. What kind of monster are you? Su Hua stabilized his body and looked at Madman in shock. This was the first time he met someone with such a terrifying body and strength. Then you can treat me as a monster. Madman chuckled. He was worried that he had nowhere to vent, but he didn't expect this person to take the initiative to come to him. Since this was the case, then let's have some fun. Shua. He took a step forward and slapped Su Hua's head. Su Hua was shocked and quickly retreated. At the same time, with a wave of his hand, divine power surged out, transforming into a towering mountain that pressed down on the madman. Supreme-level divine art? Not bad. Madman grinned and the blood demon domain instantly opened. Not only Su Hua's cultivation, but even the power of the supreme-level divine art also plummeted. This, everyone was dumbfounded. Even the power of a divine art could be weakened? The blood demon domain could weaken the opponent by 5 small realms. Su Hua's cultivation immediately fell to the 9-heaven realm. How could the 9-heaven palace be a match for Madman? Madman punched out and the towering mountain formed by divine power shattered on the spot. Following that, he slapped Su Hua's face. Su Hua was sent flying again, his face was lacerated and blood flowed out. I thought you were powerful, but it turns out that you only have this much strength. Madman shook his head and chuckled, I will be kind and send you down to reunite with your clansmen. I am a disciple of the demon palace, you dare to kill me? Su Hua roared in fear. A disciple of the demon palace? Madman was slightly stunned. He looked at the crowd and asked, are the disciples of the demon palace very powerful? When everyone heard this, they were speechless. If the disciples of the demon palace weren't powerful, then there wouldn't be anyone powerful. It seems that they are quite powerful. Madman muttered. Just as Su Hua was about to be proud, Madman suddenly changed the topic and laughed, but I am even more powerful. After saying that, he slapped Su Hua's head. This, everyone looked at each other. It was fine if he was arrogant in front of the Su family, but now he was also so arrogant in front of the disciples of the demon palace. As the overlord of the eastern continent, he wasn't afraid at all. Chapter 30-47. Su Hua was about to die at the hands of the madman, but at this moment, an even more terrifying sword light flew out from the ruins below. The space here began to shatter. The madman also felt a fatal threat and retreated without hesitation. Boom! The sword light exploded into the sky with a monstrous aura. At the same time, a middle-aged man appeared, grabbed Su Hua, and flew away like a bolt of lightning. That seems to be a heaven-defying divine artifact? Everyone was shocked. The madman's eyes were like torches as he looked at the man's back. It wasn't just Su Hua. You want to leave after sneak attacking? How can there be such a thing? The next moment, the madman used a supreme support technique and chased after the two. The man could only see the back. He didn't know who it was. But the divine artifact in his hand was a true heaven-defying divine artifact. The other party has a heaven-defying divine artifact and he still dares to chase? Everyone looked at the madman's back in disbelief. Outside the city. Mountain. The middle-aged man sped forward while looking at Su Hua. He said angrily, "Are you stupid? Coming to Wind City alone, are you looking for death?" "Uncle, I'm sorry." Su Hua lowered his head, his face filled with unconcealable pain. "Ai." Seeing Su Hua's expression, the middle-aged man sighed and comforted, "Uncle knows that the destruction of the Su family is a big blow to you. Isn't Uncle the same? After all, your mother is my sister, but we need to know how to endure. How can I endure the enmity of the destruction of my family?" Su Hua's face was filled with pain. "If you don't endure, you will die. Like now, if I didn't arrive in time, you would have died in that person's hands." The middle-aged man said angrily. Su Hua's eyes trembled as he turned to look at the madman. There was a trace of fear in his eyes. A half-step undying realm was able to reach this point. It was hard to imagine. "Don't worry, he can't catch up." The middle-aged man also used a support technique. His speed suddenly increased and he quickly left the madman behind. Su Hua retracted his gaze and said, "Uncle, help me check that old man's identity." "Uncle has already checked." The middle-aged man said. "Who is it?" Su Hua asked hurriedly. "He's a subordinate of Wind Sea City's Vice City Lord, Shuo Tiansheng. His name is Elder Yu. Although he's slightly weaker than Shuo Tiansheng, he's also at the sovereign realm." The middle-aged man said in a deep voice. "What? How could it be them?" The Su family was bewildered. "We're still looking into it. I really don't understand. Why would your father provoke Shuo Tiansheng? Who doesn't know that Shuo Tiansheng is cruel and merciless? Moreover, he's from the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. How can a small family like ours afford to offend him?" The middle-aged man sighed. "It's impossible for there to be no reason. We must investigate this thoroughly. Even if it's Shuo Tiansheng, I will make him pay the price." Su Hua's eyes were full of resentment. "Don't mess around. To deal with Shuo Tiansheng, the Devil Hall must act. But you are just an ordinary disciple. The Devil Palace will not fall out with the Rogue Cultivator Alliance because of you." The middle-aged man advised. "I know. But there will always be a way." Su Hua nodded, his face full of gloominess. "I really regret not bringing the Blood Demon Tower." Behind them. Looking at Su Hua and Su Hua disappearing in front of him, the madman was extremely angry. If the Blood Demon Tower was here, catching up to these two would be no problem at all. Decisive. He turned around and returned to Tianfeng City. Standing above the ruins of the Su family, he said, "Did any of you see that person's appearance?" Everyone was silent. 1,000,000 soul stones. The madman waved his hand, and a large pile of soul stones appeared in the air. Seeing this, a young man in black immediately flew in front of the madman and said with a flattering smile, "I saw it." After saying that, the young man waved his hand. As divine power appeared, it condensed into a middle-aged man with a square face and sideburns. "Who is he?" The madman frowned. "I don't know about that." The young man shook his head. "I know." Another old man flew in front of the madman. The madman looked at the old man and asked, "Then who is he?" The old man looked at the 1,000,000 soul stones in front of the madman, his eyes full of greed. The madman waved his hand, and another 1,000,000 soul stones appeared. The old man was overjoyed and quickly said, "His name is Su Jingshan, Su Hua's uncle. He has come to our Tianfeng City before." Su Jingshan. The madman muttered and asked, "Then where is this Su family?" The old man stammered, the greed in his eyes growing stronger. Obviously, he wanted to take the opportunity to get more soul stones. One must know how to be content. The madman's gaze turned cold. The old man's expression changed and he quickly said, "The Su family is in Tianyuan City, and I heard that it is the strongest and largest family in Tianyuan City." Tianyuan City? The madman was stunned. Tianyuan City is slightly larger than our Tianfeng City. It is said that the city lord of Tianyuan City is a terrifying expert who has just reached the ruler realm. The old man said. Just reached the ruler realm, the madman muttered, and then he turned around and activated an altar to quickly leave. The old man and young man were overjoyed and quickly put away the soul stones in the air. Just below, a black-haired old man stood silently in the crowd, and his eyes flashed as he watched the teleportation altar disappear. Soon after, he also disappeared into the crowd. Cloud Ocean City. The city lord's estate. Zhuo Tiansheng sat alone in the main hall with his head lowered. Who knew what he was thinking? Swish! A figure suddenly appeared. Zhuo Tiansheng was stunned. He raised his head and saw a black-haired old man standing in the middle of the hall. You are? Zhuo Tiansheng's eyes had a trace of suspicion. The black-haired old man smiled, took out a face-restoring pill, and threw it into his mouth. Soon. Then he would become a different face. Elder Yu? Zhuo Tiansheng was stunned and asked in confusion, "What are you doing?" When we destroyed the Su family, many people saw me, so I changed my appearance to make it easier to investigate the situation of those two people. Elder Yu smiled. Zhuo Tiansheng nodded in understanding and hurriedly asked, "Did you find anything?" Elder Yu pondered for a moment and shook his head, "It's hard to say." Hard to say? Zhuo Tiansheng was stunned and asked suspiciously, "What do you mean?" I went to many places in the past 2 days. For example, I did find a lot of information about them in towns and cities near Tianfeng City, but I'm getting more and more confused. Elder Yu frowned. Zhuo Tiansheng was stunned and said, "Tell me in detail." Elder Yu said, "First of all, in addition to Tianfeng City, I also found their footprints in Dongshan City." Dongshan City? Zhuo Tiansheng frowned. And after my investigation, the first place they appeared was Dongshan City. In other words, they went to Dongshan City first, then to Tianfeng City. Also, I went to Dongshan City and Tianfeng City's Devil Tower to secretly investigate. According to the staff of the 2 Devil Towers, both of them went to the Devil Tower. And they wanted to buy the same things. Elder Yu said. What things? Zhuo Tiansheng was suspicious. Alchemy fire, alchemy furnace, divine sound stone, teleportation altar. Elder Yu said. Zhuo Tiansheng frowned and said, "So, one of them is an alchemist?" That's what I thought too. Elder Yu nodded. What else? Zhuo Tiansheng asked. There are many more. This old man inquired from the city guards of Eastern Mountain City. The guard said that they did have some impression of the 2 of them. At that time, they saw that the 2 of them were new faces. Thus, they interrogated them again. According to the guards, when they were questioned, the 2 of them said that they were from Shanhe Town. So, I went to Shanhe Town and asked the people there carefully. Guess what? There were no such 2 people in Shanhe Town. Elder Yu said. No? Zhuo Tiansheng frowned again and said, "So, they were lying?" Elder Yu nodded. Then what happened? Zhuo Tiansheng asked. I didn't find anything in Shanhe Town, so I prepared to come back and report. But I thought about it, could I have missed something? So I returned to Tianfeng City again, which was not long ago. But guess what this old man saw? I saw that young man surnamed Mo appear in Tianfeng City again, and he was also going to the Su family. What's more, the young master of the Su family, Su Hua, was also hiding in Tianfeng City. These 2 days, Su Hua had been lurking in Tianfeng City. He heard about the conflict between the Su family and them, so he wanted to attack them. But in the end, he almost died at the hands of that kid surnamed Mo. Elder Yu smiled. Su Hua. Zhuo Tiansheng was stunned and shook his head. He's just a stray dog, not enough to reach the apex. No. You don't know, but this Su Hua is a disciple of the Demon Palace. Elder Yu shook his head. What? A disciple of the Demon Palace? Zhuo Tiansheng was shocked. Elder Yu nodded. Then the meaning is different. He even dared to kill a disciple of the Demon Palace. He's really arrogant. Zhuo Tiansheng shook his head and smiled bitterly. Yes. And at that time, that kid surnamed Mo showed disdain for the Demon Palace. It was simply too pleasing to the eye. Elder Yu smiled. Disdain? Zhuo Tiansheng was stunned. Yes. Su Hua said that I'm a disciple of the Demon Palace. You dare to kill me? But guess what that kid surnamed Mo said? He said that a disciple of the Demon Palace is very powerful. In the end, he said that I'm even more powerful, so he killed Su Hua. If Su Hua's uncle, Su Jingshan, didn't appear with a heaven-defying divine artifact, Su Hua really would have died in that kid's hands. Elder Yu shook his head and smiled. He had never seen such an arrogant young man who didn't even put the Demon Palace in his eyes. Su Jingshan? Heaven-defying divine art? Zhuo Tiansheng was stunned. Elder Yu explained, the Su family is entrenched in Tianyuan City and can be considered one of the overlords of Tianyuan City. So it's the Su family of Tianyuan City. In the past, I heard the city lord of Tianyuan City say that they have a low-grade heaven-defying divine artifact. The old patriarch of the family seems to be a half-step sovereign. Zhuo Tiansheng said. Elder Yu smiled and asked, Sir, you wouldn't be interested in the Su family's heaven-defying divine artifact, right? Would I care about a mere low-grade heaven-defying divine artifact? However, they'll find out about the Su family's matter sooner or later. They might even have found out that I was the one who asked you to do it. So, this Su family is also an invisible disaster. Zhuo Tiansheng smiled meaningfully. Chapter 30-48. Elder Yu's expression changed slightly when he heard this, and he said in a deep voice, My lord, don't be rash. I don't need you to remind me, I know. After all, we are different from those two brats surnamed Qin. We are from the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. If we kill Su Hua, the Demon Palace will definitely use this as an excuse to make a fuss. Zhuo Tiansheng waved his hand. It's good that my lord understands. Actually, my lord, you don't have to worry. Even if Su Hua knows that we did it, he won't dare to find trouble with us. Moreover, he also provoked that brat surnamed Mo. That brat is a madman and will definitely not let it go. We just have to wait and watch the show. Elder Yu smiled slightly. That's true. Zhuo Tiansheng nodded with a smile and said, although we haven't found out their origins, we can basically confirm that they have nothing to do with the Demon Palace. Elder Yu nodded. Okay, I will immediately report this matter to the city lord. Help me keep an eye on Xian. This girl has been absent-minded for the past 2 days since she came back. I'm really worried. Zhuo Tiansheng sighed. Elder Yu smiled and said, she's grown up and has someone she likes. She will definitely be like this. You're still smiling? This matter must not be taken lightly. Although they have nothing to do with the Demon Palace, their origins are unknown. What if they have ulterior motives? So this matter must be treated seriously. Zhuo Tiansheng said. Elder Yu said, then if Xian insists, what can you do? Hearing this, Zhuo Tiansheng couldn't help but smile bitterly. There were so many young talents in the Eastern continent, why did Xian take a fancy to that little madman. Suddenly, Zhuo Tiansheng seemed to have thought of something and asked, "What about Yun Ziang?" "This old man has also investigated, but there are no clues at all. I heard that he first appeared in the Tianyue building. As for the owner of the Tianyue building, it is said that she appeared in Tianfeng City 100 years ago. She plays the zither well and knows how to brew wine. Many young talents in Tianfeng City admire her. As for her name, it seems that no one knows. After all, she is a prostitute, and this old man didn't investigate it in detail." "Elder, you said. This woman is not important. The main thing is Yun Ziang. This person is not simple. I'll make a trip to Ocean of Cloud City and have a chat with the city governor. I'll ask him to pay more attention to this fellow. Alright, I'll go look for the city lord." With that, Zhuo Tiansheng stood up and left. At the same time, in Zhuo Xiaoxian's residence, a cool breeze blew past, and the lake rippled. The attic looked very quiet under the moonlight. Outside, 2 guards were protecting Zhuo Xiaoxian. Both of them were quite powerful. They were at the peak undead realm. His sharp eyes constantly scanned the surroundings. On the windowsill on the 2nd floor, Zhuo Xiaoxian was wearing a gauzy long dress, looking like a peerless fairy. She sat quietly on the windowsill, gazing at the lake. From time to time, a cynical figure would appear in his mind. Why is my mind filled with him now? Have I really fallen for him? There was a hint of confusion in her eyes. Although she had lived for thousands of years, this was the first time she had such a feeling. Is this love? Who is it? At this moment, the guard outside suddenly yelled coldly, waking Zhuo Xiaoxian up. She quickly looked over and saw a black figure standing in the air above the lake. Her eyes trembled slightly. That figure was so familiar. The black figure stood in the air above the lake, motionless. Who is it? The 2 guards were vigilant. "Hey, are you all right?" Suddenly, the black figure spoke. "You," Zhuo Xiaoxian suddenly stood up with a hint of excitement on her face. "Don't misunderstand. I'm just here to have a look." The black figure said coldly. "That's right. The black figure was madman. Just here to have a look?" Zhuo Xiaoxian was slightly stunned. She quickly looked at the 2 guards and said, "You 2 can leave first." "But miss," the 2 of them were a little anxious. "Leave, leave," Zhuo Xiaoxian urged impatiently. The 2 of them smiled helplessly at each other, then turned around and left quickly. Zhuo Xiaoxian sat on the windowsill again, looking at Madman's back. She was secretly delighted. He was clearly here to see her, yet he pretended to say that it was just on the way. Why would he come here on the way? Her eyes flickered with a hint of cunning as she asked, "So where are you going? What does it have to do with you?" Madman raised his eyebrows. "Can't I just ask?" Zhuo Xiaoxian wore a wronged expression. Women are always full of nonsense. Madman harumphed coldly and said calmly, "All right, I'm leaving." "So soon?" Zhuo Xiaoxian panicked. "What else?" "Stay here for the night." Madman had the urge to slap himself as soon as he finished speaking. How could he say something so tasteless? Zhuo Xiaoxian blushed after hearing the words. She cursed in a low voice, "Pervert." Cough cough. Madman let out a dry cough to conceal the awkwardness in his heart. Zhuo Xiaoxian gathered her courage and said while looking at Madman's back, "If you're not busy, why don't you keep me company?" "I'm very busy," Madman said. Zhuo Xiaoxian's face was filled with disappointment. "But, since you're begging me so earnestly, I'll be merciful." Madman turned around and landed beside the windowsill. He did not look at Zhuo Xiaoxian. He crossed his arms and leaned against the wall beside the windowsill. This position was blocked by the corner of the windowsill. It was just enough to avoid the sight of both parties. However, the two of them were very close to each other. They could even smell each other's scent. However, for a moment, neither of them knew what to say. They were both silent there. "Elder Yu, look, he's there." Opposite. The two guards ran over with Elder Yu and stood on the opposite side of the lake. They pointed at Madman beside the windowsill and said to themselves. Elder Yu looked at Madman and the corner of his mouth twitched slightly. It seemed that this matter had developed to the point where it could not be stopped. "Elder Yu, what should we do?" One of the guards transmitted his voice. "Let's wait and see first." Elder Yu waved his hand. To be honest, he did not know what to do either. If Xiaofan did not want to see this person, it would be fine. She could just chase him away. However, this girl looked like she was in love. She probably wanted this person to stay in the city lord's mansion forever. There was a strange atmosphere in the quiet attic. Xiaofan was the first to open the topic. She lowered her head and asked directly, "Little Madman, have you missed me in the past 2 days?" Madman's expression froze. He shook his head and said, "No." Heartless. Xiaofan pouted. "Fuck, if I didn't miss you, would I come to see you now?" Madman said angrily. "Then you admit that it wasn't on the way?" Xiaofan was delighted. Madman slapped himself in the face. Xiaofan heard the slap and quickly flew out of the windowsill. She looked at Madman and said with heartache, "Are you crazy? Why did you hit yourself? Why did you run out?" Madman raised his eyebrows. "I came out to see if you've been beaten, silly." Xiaofan rolled her eyes. Madman was a little flustered. Looking at that exquisite figure and that soft skin, there seemed to be some kind of primitive force that was about to erupt from the depths of his heart. Because the current Xiaofan was wearing a tulle dress, which was very tempting. "Go in." Madman looked away and said angrily. "We're not in the Black Tortoise realm now. Why should I listen to you?" Xiaofan raised her head like a proud little princess. "You," Madman was furious. "Aren't you very powerful? Why don't you dare to look at me now? You must be feeling guilty." Xiaofan looked at him provocatively. "Who said I don't dare to look?" Madman looked at Xiaofan. Looking at that exquisite face and those red lips, he could no longer control the primitive force in his heart. Suddenly, he hugged Xiaofan and pressed the two of them together. "You," Xiaofan immediately panicked, and her heart was beating wildly. However, before she could finish, Madman lowered his head and kissed her. In an instant, the two of them stood there in a daze as if they had been electrocuted. On the opposite side of the lake, the two guards hurriedly transmitted their voices. "Elder Yu, look." Elder Yu's face darkened as he yelled, "What are you looking at? Turn around." The two of them shrunk their necks and quickly turned around, mumbling unhappily, "Aren't you enjoying it too?" Elder Yu's expression immediately turned awkward, and he immediately turned around. "Elder Yu, what do you think we should do? Should we stop it or not?" The two of them asked softly. "I don't know." Elder Yu shook his head. The speed of their development was a little beyond his and Zhuo Tiancheng's expectations. One of the guards said, "Why don't you inform the master?" This, Elder Yu pondered for a moment and nodded, "All right, but you're not allowed to peek. Otherwise, I'll gouge your eyeballs out." We won't." The two guards hurriedly waved their hands. Beside the window, Madman and Xiaofan were still hugging each other. Their lips were pressed together, and it felt as if time had stopped. Both of their hearts were beating faster and faster. "What are you doing?" After a long while, Xiaofan finally recovered. She hurriedly pushed Madman away, lowered her head, and said angrily with a red face, Madman also finally came back to his senses. He smacked his lips as if he wanted more, and mumbled, "So fragrant." "What did you say?" Zhuo Xiaoxian immediately raised her head and glared at Madman, her face flushed red. "Nothing, nothing." Madman hurriedly waved his hand. "You're bullying me too." "Humph." Zhuo Xiaoxian snorted and turned around, her back facing Madman. It didn't feel like she was angry at all, but more like she was acting coquettishly. Madman stood behind her, at a loss for a moment. "Hug." Suddenly, a familiar voice sounded in Madman's mind. Madman was slightly startled, and immediately raised his head to scan the void. "Isn't this Qin Feiyang's voice? Why is this bastard here too? Has he been following him?" At that moment, Madman fell into an awkward situation. This bastard must have seen everything, and he would definitely laugh at him in the future. "Don't just stand there, this is a good opportunity." Fire Lotus's voice sounded in Madman's mind again. Madman's eyes were instantly filled with anger. He went to Fire Lotus for help because he didn't want Qin Feiyang to know that he had run out. However, this 10,000-year-old leftover woman not only didn't help him keep it a secret, but also told Qin Feiyang, and they came together to join in the fun. How unreliable. Chapter 3049. It's not like this is something shameful. Why are you so shy? Hurry up. We're all cheering you on. Qin Feiyang's helpless voice sounded. "We?" Madman was slightly stunned and hurriedly asked, "Who's watching?" "Everyone's here." Qin Feiyang replied. "Martial Uncle Madman, I'm here too." Wang Xiaojia's voice sounded. Madman's face was dark. Who were these people? Did they have nothing to do? "Brother Madman, go for it. We have faith in you." Long Tianyu's voice sounded. The corner of Madman's mouth twitched. As expected, they were a group of people who had nothing to do. He couldn't help but look at Zhuo Xiaoxian's back. A hint of tenderness flashed through his eyes. Tenderness? It was very rare to see that from him. It was obvious that he was truly moved. In the end, he gritted his teeth, raised his hands, and slowly hugged Zhuo Xiaoxian from behind. Zhuo Xiaoxian naturally noticed it. She glanced at Madman's hands, and her body stiffened slightly. However, she didn't resist. Madman saw that she didn't resist, so he hugged Zhuo Xiaoxian and pulled her into his arms. Zhuo Xiaoxian's face was so red that it could drip water. "Not bad, not bad. You're worth teaching." Black Tortoise World. Qin Feiyang laughed. "You still have the nerve to talk about him. Don't you know what kind of person you were back then? Speaking of which, this madman is more courageous and promising than you." Qin Rushuang looked down on him. Qin Feiyang's smile froze. He glared at Qin Rushuang angrily. "At least he's better than you, a 10,000-year-old leftover woman." A 10,000-year-old leftover woman? Qin Rushuang was stunned. She immediately bared her teeth and roared, "You little bastard, I'll beat you to death today." Outside, Zhuo Xiaoxian seemed to have adapted and accepted it. She took the initiative to snuggle in Madman's arms. The lake rippled, and the moonlight was enchanting. The two hugged each other quietly, like a pair of immortal couples. In another place, in the centermost hall, Zhuo Tiansheng looked at the city lord above and said with a smile, "Sir, this is the result of Elder Yu's investigation." When the city lord heard that, he nodded and said, "As long as it is not the Demon Royal Hall's people, it is fine." But, Zhuo Tiansheng frowned. "I know you have your concerns, but you and I don't have the final say in matters of the heart. Xian has also grown up. She has her own opinions and knows her own choices. We'll talk about it later." Even if you and I were to stop it, would we be able to? Not only can we not stop him, we even have to pray that this little lunatic is also interested in Xian. After all, we still don't know this little lunatic's attitude towards Xian. What if it's just Xian's wishful thinking? How sad would Xian be then? The city lord shook his head. Zhuo Tiansheng smiled bitterly. Oh. Why did it feel like he had to curry favor with this little lunatic and beg him to like his daughter? Alright, I'll contact the Vice Alliance leader and explain the situation to him. The city lord didn't ask Zhuo Tiansheng to leave. He directly took out the divine sound transmission stone. Wang. Very soon. A shadow appeared. This was an old man in a green robe. His back was stooped, and he held a dark green snake-shaped walking stick in his hand. The old man sat on a chair carved out of stone, his eyes flickering with a faint light. Greetings to Lord Vice Alliance leader. The city lord and Zhuo Tiansheng immediately stood up and bowed. The green-robed old man nodded. The city lord said respectfully, Lord, I'm sending you a message to report Wang Hui's matter. Speak. The green-robed old man said with a hoarse voice. We have investigated carefully. The cause of this matter is all because of Wang Hui's son, Wang Feng. He bullied men and women and did evil. As the city lord of Tianfeng City, not only did Wang Hui not deal with it impartially, he even used the power in his hands to condone and protect him. This caused a series of events to happen. The city lord said. I see. The green-robed old man nodded in realization and asked, Then who are the two people who killed Wang Hui? The city lord said, According to our investigation, one of them is called Qin Feiyang and the other is Madman Mo. Qin Feiyang, Madman Mo? The green-robed old man suddenly stood up and looked at the city lord in surprise. Looking at the green-robed old man's reaction, the city lord was slightly stunned and asked suspiciously, Lord, do you know them? The green-robed old man did not answer. His eyes flickered and then he returned to the stone chair and said indifferently, Even if this matter is caused by Wang Hui's son, Wang Hui is still a member of our Rogue Cultivator Alliance. The city lord's heart trembled and said respectfully, Lord, please tell us. If this matter is not investigated, then the world will inevitably talk about our Rogue Cultivator Alliance behind our backs. Therefore, we must kill these two people as an example to others. The green-robed old man's eyes flashed coldly. What? The city lord and Zhuo Tiansheng were shocked. Killing one as an example to others, didn't that mean they had to kill Qin Feiyang and Madman Mo? Didn't you hear me clearly? The green-robed old man frowned. Yes, yes, yes. The city lord quickly nodded and said, But it's not their fault. If we do this, won't it be unfair? Fairness is based on strength. The words of those who are strong are just. You must kill them, or I will kill you. The green-robed old man said coldly. Lord, what else did Zhuo Tiansheng want to say? But the city lord quickly stared at him, indicating for him to shut up. Then, the city lord looked at the green-robed old man and said respectfully, Yes, we will deal with it immediately. The green-robed old man nodded. Then, his shadow dissipated. What exactly is going on? Zhuo Tiansheng frowned. I don't know either. But this is the vice leader's idea. We have no choice. The city lord shook his head and sighed. What about Xian? Zhuo Tiansheng asked. Time heals everything. The city lord said. Sigh. I only hope that Xian won't hate us in the future. Zhuo Tiansheng sighed. There's nothing we can do even if she hates us. If we dare to disobey, we won't be the only ones to die. Xian will also be implicated. The city lord looked helpless. Then that's the only way. Zhuo Tiansheng shook his head. Swish. At this moment, Old Yu entered the main hall and said respectfully to the city lord, "Greetings, lord." "You're welcome." The city lord smiled slightly. "What are you doing here?" Zhuo Tiansheng looked at him suspiciously. "There's something I need to report to you," Old Yu said. "What's the matter?" The two of them were puzzled. "That kid surnamed Mo is here." Old Yu smiled bitterly. "What? He's here? When did he come? Where is he?" The two of them hurriedly asked. "He's with Xian and," Old Yu looked at the two of them with a helpless expression. "Hurry up and tell us," the two of them urged. Old Yu smiled and said, "They even kissed." "What?" The two of them froze. "They actually kissed. Are you sure?" Zhuo Tiansheng looked at Old Yu and asked. "I saw it with my own eyes." Old Yu nodded. "Then why didn't you stop them?" Zhuo Tiansheng said angrily. "Is this something I can stop?" Old Yu was speechless. "My dear brother, this matter is serious." Zhuo Tiansheng shouted and immediately rushed out of the main hall. "Serious?" Old Yu was slightly stunned. Looking at the city lord, he asked, "What happened to him?" "Sigh. There's something you don't know. Just now, the vice leader has already given the order to eliminate these two." The city lord sighed. "It can't be." Old Yu's body stiffened, and he hurriedly asked, "Didn't you make it clear?" "We've already told the truth, but the vice leader must kill one to warn the others," the city lord said. "Kill one to warn the others? Is this equivalent to protecting Wang Hui and his son in disguise?" Old Yu frowned. "What can we do about the vice leader's order?" The city lord shook his head and said, "Let's not talk about it for now. Let's hurry over and take a look." "Okay." Old Yu nodded. The two of them rushed out of the main hall like lightning. "Little lunatic, do you really like me?" In front of the pavilion. Under the moonlight, it was incomparably romantic. "I don't like you." Lunatic shook his head. Zhuo Xiaoxian said angrily, "If you don't like me, why are you hugging me? You even forcefully kissed me." "I like it." Lunatic said proudly. "Stinky hooligan." Zhuo Xiaoxian blushed and cursed. After being together in the Black Tortoise world for 15,000 years, how could she not understand Lunatic? This was a guy who didn't mean what he said. Opposite. Zhuo Tiansheng appeared. "Sir." The two guards hurriedly bowed. Zhuo Tiansheng nodded and looked directly at the pavilion opposite. Seeing Lunatic and Zhuo Xiaoxian snuggling together, he couldn't help but feel a trace of pity in his eyes. Old Yu and the city lord also rushed over. Seeing this scene, they also felt a little uncomfortable. From here, the two of them were quite compatible. Especially Xiaoxian, her face was completely filled with happiness. Old Yu frowned and sent a voice transmission, "City lord, why don't you go and plead with the vice leader again? It's useless." The city lord shook his head. Just take it as the vice leader's firm attitude. If he went to plead, he would definitely get into trouble. But, he had watched Zhuo Xiaoxian grow up. In his eyes, she was like a granddaughter. It wasn't easy to find happiness. Old Yu really couldn't bear to destroy it. Since things have come to this, there's nothing else to say. We must break them up. The city lord took a deep breath, took a step forward, and landed in front of Lunatic and Zhuo Xiaoxian. "Father," Zhuo Xiaoxian quickly struggled out of Lunatic's arms and looked at Zhuo Tiansheng in panic. Lunatic's expression stiffened slightly too. This was a little awkward. Zhuo Tiansheng glanced at Lunatic, then looked at Zhuo Xiaoxian and said angrily, "You're an unmarried girl, and you're hugging a man in public. What's wrong with you?" "Father, Zhuo Xiaoxian lowered her head in panic like a child who had done something wrong. No, it's my fault. Don't scold her. Lunatic stepped forward and grabbed Zhuo Xiaoxian's hand while looking at Zhuo Tiansheng. After all, he was his future father-in-law. He had to treat him nicely. Zhuo Xiaoxian glanced at Lunatic. Feeling the warmth from Lunatic's hand, she felt a lot more at ease. I really want to scold you. Not only did you kidnap my daughter, you're harassing her now. Do you really think you can do whatever you want just because you saved me once? Zhuo Tiansheng said angrily. Lunatic raised his eyebrows and said, I didn't do anything wrong. I just like your daughter. Like? What do you have to like her? Can you give her happiness? Zhuo Tiansheng yelled. Yes. Lunatic nodded without hesitation. Chapter 30-50. Hearing Madman's answer without any hesitation, Zhuo Tiansheng couldn't help but be dazed. This kind of attitude couldn't be faked. Because he was also someone who had been through it. From Madman's eyes, he didn't see any signs of faking it. This kid was serious. Zhuo Tiansheng took a deep breath and looked at Zhuo Xiaoxian. Girl, you also believe that he can bring you happiness? Yes. Zhuo Xiaoxian nodded. Zhuo Tiansheng looked at his daughter with a serious gaze. He couldn't help but have an impulse. Why don't you elope? The further you go, the better. Don't come back. However, when he thought of the deputy leader's strength and the power of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance in the Eastern Continent, he couldn't help but feel weak. Although the Rogue Cultivator Alliance wasn't as powerful as the Demon Hall, it was spread throughout the entire Eastern Continent. No matter where they ran, they wouldn't be able to escape the pursuit of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. If he really allowed it, it would only harm his daughter. Not only was the life of a fugitive difficult, it was also very dangerous. They could lose their lives at any time. He didn't want his daughter to live such a life, and he didn't want to worry about her every day. Old Zhuo, why are you so angry? Suddenly, the city lord and Elder Yu walked out. Foster father, Elder Yu, Zhuo Xiaoxian hurriedly looked at the two of them for help. What? Foster father? Madman was stunned. Zhuo Xiaoxian pointed at the city lord and said with a smile, That's right, he's my foster father and also the city lord of Wind Sea City. City lord. Madman's pupils constricted. The city lord of Cloud Sea City was a perfected ruler, so the city lord of Wind Sea City was definitely not bad. He didn't expect this woman to have such a terrifying foster father. Did she have a backer? The city lord and Madman sat in front of Zhuo Tiansheng. Zhuo Tiansheng looked at the two of them suspiciously. I'll handle it. The city lord said secretly, then looked at Zhuo Xiaoxian and said with a smile, Aren't you going to introduce him? Yes. Zhuo Xiaoxian nodded, pulled Madman to the city lord, and said, Foster father, he's the little madman I told you about. The city lord sized Madman up curiously. Greetings, greetings city lord. Madman cupped his hands in an unnatural manner. Zhuo Xiaoxian pulled Madman's sleeve and said in a low voice, Don't call him Castellan. Then what should I be called? Madman was suspicious. Idiot, of course I'll call him uncle. Don't tell me I'll call him adoptive father too. Zhuo Xiaoxian rolled her eyes. The city lord chuckled and said, It's indeed too early to call him foster father. Isn't that just a matter of time? Zhuo Xiaoxian grinned. Ugh. The city lord was taken aback. He smiled bitterly and said, Girl, you seem to be afraid that you won't be able to get married. Hee. Zhuo Xiaoxian smiled mischievously. The city lord looked at the madman again and said with a smile, Xian has mentioned you more than once in front of me. That's her personality. She talks a lot of nonsense. Madman said uncomfortably. This was really the first time in his life, and he was a little nervous. Who's talking nonsense? Zhuo Xiaoxian glared at the lunatic discontentedly. You. Madman said. You bastard, Zhuo Xiaoxian glared at him angrily. Couldn't he save her some face in front of her 3 relatives? All right, can you pay attention to the situation first before flirting? The city lord was helpless. The madman and Zhuo Xiaoxian smiled awkwardly. The city lord looked at the madman and asked with a smile, I heard that you have a friend? Yes. The madman nodded. Since you and Xian have already developed to this point, why don't you invite him to the city lord mansion? Also, there's a misunderstanding between you and old Zhuo. Take this opportunity to resolve this misunderstanding. Of course. The most important thing is to discuss the matter between you and Xian. The city lord smiled. Are we talking about marriage already? The madman looked at the city lord in a daze. What else? Since you guys have already kissed, then of course it has to be resolved quickly. The city lord looked at the 2 of them and said. Zhuo Xiaoxian's cheeks were boiling hot again. She glared at the madman and complained, It's all your fault. You made me be laughed at by my adoptive father. The madman smiled embarrassedly. However, wasn't it too soon to talk about marriage now? Yes. He had indeed kissed Zhuo Xiaoxian, but shouldn't there be a buffer period? Why? You don't want to? If you don't want to, then you won't be happy. Xian, is not only the apple of old Zhuo's eye, she's also my precious treasure. I won't allow anyone to hurt her. Besides, there's a saying that goes, those who don't fall in love with the purpose of marriage are all hooligans. The city lord looked at the madman unhappily. City lord, you're exaggerating. At this moment, accompanied by a faint laugh, Qin Feiyang appeared beside the madman. Qin Dage? Zhuo Xiaoxian was slightly stunned and quickly asked, Why are you here? Ahem. Qin Feiyang coughed dryly. He couldn't say that he had been secretly watching, so he smiled and said, I just happened to pass by. Zhuo Xiaoxian was stunned. Another coincidence? How could there be so many coincidences in the world? Did he really think she was an idiot? Qin Feiyang quickly changed the topic. He looked at the 3 of them and bowed. Junior Qin Feiyang greets the 3 seniors. The city lord sized up Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang gave him a very good first impression. He didn't have the slightest arrogance of a young man, and he seemed very polite. Furthermore, he had such a temperament. Even when facing the city lord, he was neither servile nor overbearing. Senior city lord, I actually didn't take those misunderstandings to heart a long time ago. Moreover, I'm the one who should really apologize. Because it was I who asked senior brother Madman to come to Cloud Sea City and kidnap Xiaoxian. So, I solemnly apologize to the 3 of you. Qin Feiyang cupped his hands. There's no need for that. After all, your actions are understandable because it was old Zhuo who wanted to deal with you first. The city lord smiled. City lord's magnanimity is truly admirable. But now that I think about it, if it weren't for these things, would senior brother Madman and Xiaoxian be together? No way. They wouldn't even have known each other for the rest of their lives. So, this can be considered as a coincidence that formed a golden match. Qin Feiyang chuckled. That makes sense. This is fate. The city lord nodded and laughed. Then, he looked at Zhuo Tianqing and said, Old Zhuo, don't keep a bitter face. Is this what it is? Yes, no discord, no concord. Zhuo Tianqing smiled bitterly. What golden match? It was clearly an ill-fated relationship. Enough. This girl will eventually get married when she grows up. Hurry up and tell the chef to prepare some good wine and dishes. Let's have a few drinks with this future son-in-law. The city lord said. Drink? Zhuo Tiansheng was stunned. Wasn't he going to kill him? Why was he drinking? Hurry up. The city lord urged. Okay. Zhuo Tiansheng nodded, turned to look at the two guards by the lake, and said, Go and tell the kitchen to prepare some good wine and dishes and send them to the guest room. Yes. The two responded respectfully, turned around, and ran away. Little brother, please. The city lord looked at Qin Feiyang and said with a smile. Senior, please. Qin Feiyang cupped his hands and smiled. The city lord chuckled and immediately walked toward a large hall. City lord, what are you doing? Zhuo Tiansheng and Elder Yu looked at the city lord in confusion. The city lord said, Don't you want to know more about them? If it wasn't for the deputy leader's order, this would definitely be necessary, but is it still necessary now? Zhuo Tiansheng was suspicious. I'm quite curious about them. Really? Especially this Qin Feiyang, the calmness he showed in front of us is not something a young man should have. The city lord said. But, the two were anxious. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. The city lord smiled faintly. At the back. Qin Feiyang and Madman walked together, and Zhuo Xiaoxian followed Madman from beginning to end. I didn't expect you to be so talkative. You've even brought up your golden marriage. Madman pursed his lips. Qin Dage, I also admire you. Zhuo Xiaoxian giggled. Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled, and said, For your marriage, of course I have to work hard. I didn't see you being so concerned about your own matters back then. Madman rolled his eyes. Little Madman, Qin Dage is being kind, why are you still scolding him? Besides, if Qin Dage didn't care, how could he marry sister-in-law? Zhuo Xiaoxian looked at Madman with dissatisfaction. Why are you interrupting when men are talking? Madman glared. Zhuo Xiaoxian stuck out her tongue. Madman glanced at Zhuo Xiaoxian, then looked at Madman and said, See, justice is in the heart. Humph. Madman said in disdain. He then glanced at the city lord and transmitted his voice, Are you really going to talk about the marriage? Of course. I don't mean to criticize you, but why are you being so impulsive? You've just broken the window paper, and you're already going to kiss someone else. Qin Feiyang was speechless. Do you think I'm like you? Stop wasting time. Madman wore a disdainful look. Alright, you're good. Qin Feiyang let out a helpless smile. Not long after. The group arrived at a huge hall. The hall was not huge, and the decorations were not luxurious. There was a dining table made of mahogany, with a diameter of around 3 to 4 meters. It was surrounded by more than 10 exquisitely carved wooden chairs. There was also a tea table beside it, with sandalwood burning on top of it. The aroma spread across the hall. Please have a seat. The city lord went to the main seat and said to Qin Feiyang and Madman with a smile. Then we won't be courteous. Qin Feiyang let out a smile and dragged Madman to sit opposite the city lord. Zhuo Xiaoxian naturally sat beside Madman too. However, Zhuo Tiansheng was not happy about it. He said, Xian, come sit beside me. Ah, Zhuo Xiaoxian glanced at Zhuo Tiansheng with a confused look. You're not even married yet. Zhuo Tiansheng snapped. Zhuo Xiaoxian was slightly startled, before she let out an embarrassed smile and ran to Zhuo Tiansheng's side. Girl, you can't wait to get married right now, right? The city lord looked at Zhuo Xiaoxian in amusement. I'm not. Zhuo Xiaoxian nodded with a blushing face. The city lord shook his head with a smile. He glanced at Qin Feiyang and Madman and said, You're not outsiders now. Feel free to tell me if you need anything. Sure. Qin Feiyang nodded. His first impression of the city lord was quite pleasant. He was humble without any arrogance. Chapter 30-51. After chatting for a while, more than a dozen maids entered the main hall with a variety of dishes. The inner hall was suddenly filled with the fragrance of dishes. There were also a few pots of wine. Before it was opened, one could smell the rich wine fragrance. Pour it for the two little brothers. Two maids served Qin Feiyang and Madman. As soon as the city lord spoke, they immediately poured wine into the wine cups in front of the two people. The wine cup was not big, about 1 or 2 cups. The wine was sparkling like jade, and the wine fragrance was even stronger, making Madman swallow his saliva. But Qin Feiyang didn't feel anything. No matter how good the wine was, it couldn't be compared to the most ordinary cup of tea in his eyes. This wine is the famous heavenly mountain dew of my Wind Sea City. Ordinary people can't drink it. The city lord smiled. Then I'll thank Senior for your hospitality. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. The city lord smiled, picked up the wine cup and said, "Come, let's drink to our friendship." Zhuo Tiansheng and Elder Yu also picked up the wine cup. Qin Feiyang and Madman looked at each other, also picked up the wine cup, toasted the three of them, and then put it to their mouths to taste. "How is it?" the city lord asked with a smile. They were straightforward and drank it in one gulp. "Not bad." Madman nodded. It was a level better than the heavenly immortal wine and could already be called a divine wine. He then raised his head and drank it in one gulp. But Qin Feiyang only took a sip and then put down the wine cup. "Brother Qin, what are you doing?" The city lord looked at him suspiciously. "Senior, don't laugh, Junior doesn't know how to drink." Qin Feiyang smiled apologetically. The city lord couldn't help but laugh. A young man who didn't drink was really rare. After 3 rounds of wine, the city lord put down the wine cup and looked at Madman with a smile. "Since you and Xian have already developed to this point, then shouldn't you tell us something?" "Tell us something?" Madman was taken aback. "For example, your identity, your background, and your family. When children get married, both families have to know each other, right?" The city lord smiled. Madman fell silent. "You don't even have this much sincerity?" Zhuo Tiansheng frowned. "Father," Zhuo Shaoxian looked at Zhuo Tiansheng unhappily. "This time, just sit still and don't interrupt." Zhuo Tiansheng glared at her, then looked at the madman and said, "We know nothing about you. How can I be at ease handing my daughter over to you like this?" Madman remained silent. There was even a trace of annoyance on his face. The mystery of his birth had always been a thorn in his heart. He also wanted to know, and he also wanted someone to tell him. However, the only person in the world who could possibly know about this was the guardian of the ancient realm. No matter how much he begged, the guardian refused to tell him. Therefore, whenever he thought of this matter, he would feel very irritated, and because of this, he was very unwilling to think about it. But now, Zhuo Tiansheng was constantly interrogating him. With his temper, it was already very rare for him to be able to endure and not say a word. If it were anyone else, they would have left long ago. Sigh. Qin Feiyang naturally understood Madman very well. He sighed deeply and raised his head to look at Zhuo Tiansheng and the other two. "Seniors, you might not know, but senior brother Madman doesn't have any family." The 3 of them were stunned. "I won't hide it from you 3 seniors. Senior brother Madman doesn't even know his surname now. Because he is an orphan. He was raised by his foster father since he was young." Qin Feiyang said. "Orphan," the 3 of them were stunned. "What about his foster father?" Zhuo Tiansheng was suspicious. "He was also assassinated many years ago and died an unnatural death." Qin Feiyang sighed. The city lord and the other two looked at each other, their hearts trembling. No wonder this child became so depressed when it came to his family. It turned out that there was a past that he couldn't bear to look back on. At the same time, looking at the silent madman, Xiaofan couldn't help but feel heartache. Normally, when she looked at Lunatic, she thought that he was a simple-minded person. But who would have thought that deep in his heart, there was actually so much sadness hidden in his past? I'm sorry. The city lord smiled apologetically. It's okay. You will know sooner or later anyway. Qin Feiyang shook his head. What about you? The city lord asked with a smile. Me? Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned and said with a faint smile, this junior is just a nobody. A nobody would have a superior heaven-defying artifact? Aren't you being too modest? The city lord chuckled. It's just luck. I can get to where I am today because of the support of my friends and my own hard work. Qin Feiyang shook his head. The city lord couldn't help but show a trace of disappointment in his eyes. After all this time, he didn't find out anything. If this child was telling the truth, it would be fine. But if he was being vague, then he was not ordinary. Then if we let little madman marry into the city lord mansion, would you be willing? The city lord thought for a moment and said with a smile. Marry into the family? Qin Feiyang and madman looked at each other. Since you don't have a family, it's not a bad idea to marry into our city lord mansion. After you and Xian get married, this will be your home. We will also be your family. Elder Yu laughed hoarsely. I have never been alone. I have brothers and companions. They are my family. Madman said. Elder Yu smiled bitterly. This was considered a tactful rejection. All right then. We've talked enough. It's time for us to get down to business. The city lord smiled slightly. Zhuo Tiansheng and Elder Yu's hearts skipped a beat. Zhuo Tiansheng hurriedly sent a voice transmission, should we send Xiaoxian away first? Definitely. The city lord replied secretly. Zhuo Tiansheng immediately looked at Zhuo Xiaoxian and said with a smile, Xian, you go back first. We have something to discuss. What is it that I can't know? Zhuo Xiaoxian frowned. It's a secret. We promise to give you a surprise when the time comes. Good girl, listen to us. Zhuo Tiansheng smiled. Zhuo Xiaoxian glanced at Madman, then at Zhuo Tiansheng, and nodded helplessly. All right. With that, she stood up and left with anticipation. The city lord looked at the maids who were serving at the side and waved his hand. You all can leave too. Yes. The group of maids bowed and replied, then turned around and left in a line. Following that, the city lord waved his hand, and the door of the hall slowly closed. Qin Feiyang and Madman exchanged glances, somewhat confused. The city lord smiled at the two of them and waved his arm again. A divine power barrier appeared and enveloped the entire hall. City lord, what's the meaning of this? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Because there are some things that we can't let Xiaoxian know. Otherwise, she will hate us. The city lord smiled. Qin Feiyang frowned. What did that mean? But suddenly, from Elder Yu and Zhuo Tiansheng's bodies, he could sense a faintly discernible killing intent. If it was anyone else, they wouldn't be able to sense it at all. Madman next to him didn't sense it at all. But he was different. He cultivated the kill art and was especially sensitive to killing intent. Even though the two of them concealed it perfectly, they still couldn't escape his senses. On the other hand, he didn't sense any killing intent from the city lord until now. It was clear how terrifying the city lord's shrewdness was. Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered slightly as he transmitted his voice, Senior Brother Madman, be careful. Madman was taken aback. They might want to break up the couple. Qin Feiyang secretly said. Madman immediately frowned without leaving a trace. Actually, I'm really satisfied with you. And Xiao Xian also likes you very much. Both of you are in love with each other. To be honest, I really don't want to break up the two of you. But there are some things that even we don't have a choice. The city lord shook his head and sighed. Madman frowned. But the next moment, his face turned pale and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His entire body suddenly collapsed on the table powerlessly. What's going on? Qin Feiyang was shocked and hurriedly helped Madman up. He found that Madman's lips had turned black. Even the bloodstain at the corner of his mouth had turned black. This was a sign of poisoning. You guys, Qin Feiyang immediately raised his head and looked at the three of them. But immediately after, he also felt weak all over and his head was dizzy. Then, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. Furthermore, the blood was slowly turning pitch black. Madman sat up weakly and looked at Qin Feiyang's lips and bloodstains. He immediately became furious and roared, "What did you do? Isn't it obvious?" The city lord smiled slightly. Why? Even if you don't want Zhuo Xiaoxian to be with me, you can just say so. I'll leave. Why do you have to be so ruthless? Madman was burning with anger and his consciousness became more and more dizzy. He never expected that the Tianyun realm really had a strong poison that could kill an undead realm expert. And Zhuo Xiaoxian didn't actually leave. She just stood outside the door and waited. But with the soundproof barrier, she couldn't hear what was going on inside at all. Instead, she was still looking forward to it. Didn't I say just now? I'm actually quite satisfied with you, but there are some things that we have no choice about. The city lord sighed. Then who wants to get rid of us? Qin Feiyang asked. I can't say. The city lord shook his head. Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice, Then when did you poison him? Heavenly Mountain Dew. When old Zhuo asked the two guards to inform the kitchen to prepare the wine and dishes, I secretly sent them a voice transmission and asked them to put some spirit-severing powder in the Heavenly Mountain Dew. As for this spirit-severing powder, it's also a famous poison in the eastern continent. It's colorless and odorless. One drop is enough to kill. The city lord smiled. Qin Feiyang said gloomily, Then why weren't you poisoned? That's simple. Only the 2 pots of Heavenly Mountain Dew that you drank had spirit-severing powder in them. The city lord held the wine cup and drank while smiling. Qin Feiyang was shocked. This person's shrewdness was really terrifying. From the beginning to the end, he didn't sense any killing intent. Even at this moment, he didn't sense any killing intent from the city lord. He was talking and laughing while taking people's lives. It could be said that this was the most shrewd person he had ever seen so far. He didn't leave any trace at all. Zhuo Tiansheng and Elder Yu glanced at the wine pot next to Qin Feiyang and Madman, and only then did they realize. It turned out that the city lord had already planned this. Spirit-severing powder, they were very clear about this poison. Without the antidote, even if the gods descended to earth, they wouldn't be able to save them. Qin Feiyang and Elder Yu became more and more dizzy. Even though Qin Feiyang was immune to poison, he couldn't withstand the toxicity of this spirit-severing powder. And they also found that the poison was not only corroding their bodies, but also their spirits. Chapter 3052. It wasn't their fault for being careless, it was the city lord who concealed it too well. Moreover, even if they thought of it, they would only think that the other party wanted to break up the couple and would never think that he wanted to get rid of them. Suddenly, frenzy fell into the chair and his life fluctuations quickly dissipated. Senior brother, Qin Feiyang was shocked and hurriedly released his divine sense to check, and a trace of shock appeared in his eyes. He found that Frenzy's divine soul was shrouded in a black mist as if it was rotting. He hurriedly checked his divine soul and found that it was the same. This was spirit-severing powder, corroding the divine soul. Because Qin Feiyang had only taken a small sip from beginning to end, he could still hold on. But Frenzy drank a lot, almost half a bottle. Qin Feiyang looked at the three of them and said in a deep voice, "Give us the antidote and we will leave immediately and never appear again." Impossible. The city lord shook his head. Qin Feiyang's brows were filled with hostility as he roared, "I will say it one last time, give us the antidote." The city lord continued to drink and had no intention of taking out the antidote. Good, good, good. Qin Feiyang was so angry that he laughed, his eyes flashing with strong killing intent as he said with a sinister smile, "Since you are so heartless, then don't blame me for being unrighteous." Qin Feiyang grabbed Frenzy and prepared to enter the Black Tortoise world. Zhuo Tiansheng suddenly stood up and slapped Qin Feiyang's chest. Poof! Qin Feiyang spat out another mouthful of black blood and immediately crashed into the barrier set up by the city lord with Frenzy like a meteor. His body was even more cracked, and the bloody scars were a ghastly sight. "You are courting death." But at this moment, Frenzy suddenly woke up and saw Qin Feiyang's situation, killing intent surged in his eyes. What? Zhuo Tiansheng and Elder Yu were shocked. Wasn't he already poisoned to death? How did he come back to life? Furthermore, even his jet-black lips were regaining their color. What was going on? Did he have the antidote? The city lord who was drinking couldn't help but be startled when he saw this scene. Qin Feiyang also looked at Madman in astonishment. Madman grabbed Qin Feiyang and sent a surge of divine power into Qin Feiyang's body. "This is..." Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled. "Isn't this senior brother Crazy's evil power? Could it be that senior brother Feng Zi's improvement had something to do with this evil force?" He hurriedly looked at his sea of knowledge and was pleasantly surprised to find that when the evil energy entered his sea of knowledge, it quickly began to engulf the poisonous fog formed by the spirit-severing powder. "Senior brother, you..." Qin Feiyang looked at Madman in surprise. "Don't ask me. I didn't know that this evil force had the ability to devour poisonous fog. Earlier, after I fainted, the evil power took the initiative to devour the poison in my body." Madman transmitted. "I see." Qin Feiyang came to a sudden realization and immediately grabbed Madman and disappeared without a trace. "Not good." Zhuo Tiansheng exclaimed. Elder Yu was also quite anxious. He never thought that the other party would be able to remove the poison of the spirit-severing powder. "This is unexpected." The city lord put down his wine cup and scanned the void. "Don't worry, as long as my barrier is still there, they won't be able to escape." Immediately, Zhuo Tiansheng and Elder Yu released their divine sense and scanned the void. Sure enough, they found the Black Tortoise realm. At this moment, the Black Tortoise realm was floating where Qin Feiyang and Madman disappeared. This spatial divine item is very powerful. I tried it before and even my superior heaven-defying divine artifact couldn't break it. Zhuo Tiansheng said in a deep voice. The city lord pondered and remained silent. Inside the Black Tortoise realm, when Madman and Elder Yu appeared, Fire Lotus and the others immediately surrounded them. Because they had been watching from the Black Tortoise realm. "How are you two?" Mermaid Princess stepped forward to support Qin Feiyang, her face full of anxiety. "I'm fine." Qin Feiyang waved his hand. The evil power had almost devoured the poison in his body. Madman's gaze was also gloomy as he looked up at the image in the void. In the image, the city lord and the other two were silent and extremely quiet. "They're courting death." White-Eyed Wolf smiled sinisterly. "Don't be rash. This city lord should be a perfected dominator. We're not his match. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Then he can't do anything to us. Wang Ming sneered. Yang Li frowned and looked at Qin Feiyang. They'll probably drag it out with us. What resources don't our Black Tortoise realm have now? Why are you afraid of dragging it out? White-eyed Wolf had a look of disdain. It was different now. In the past, when they only had the ancient castle, they were really worried about dragging it out. Because at that time, there were no resources in the ancient castle. But it was different now. Now that they had an independent world with endless resources, it didn't matter how long they dragged it out. They could also take the opportunity to calm down and cultivate properly. Seeing that the city lord didn't say anything, Zhuo Tianxing urged, "Hurry up and think of a solution. We can't drag it out with them like this." Although Qin Feiyang and Madman's cultivation wasn't very high, he felt uneasy. Letting them stay in the city lord's mansion felt like 2 ticking time bombs. He didn't dare to relax for even a moment. "Father, Godfather, have you finished discussing?" At this moment, Zhuo Xiaoxian's voice came from outside. Zhuo Tianxing and the other 2 immediately looked at the door. Xiaoxian was still outside? "City Lord, you know Xian's temper. If we drag it out for too long, she'll definitely barge in." Zhuo Tianxing was burning with anxiety. The city lord's eyes flickered. He suddenly waved his hand and the door opened. "Why are you still opening the door?" Zhuo Tianxing was shocked. If his daughter saw this, wouldn't she be heartbroken? The city lord ignored him. He looked at Zhuo Xiaoxian standing outside the door and smiled. "Come in." Zhuo Xiaoxian looked at the hall and found that there was a divine power barrier. A hint of suspicion crept into her eyes. She entered the hall. The city lord waved his hand, and the door swiftly closed. After entering the hall, Zhuo Xiaoxian saw the black bloodstains on the table and the ground. She was shocked and said, "What's this? And where are they?" Qin Feiyang and Madman were nowhere to be seen in the hall. The city lord remained silent. He raised his hand and grabbed at the air. Zhuo Xiaoxian immediately flew toward the city lord uncontrollably. Following that, the city lord grabbed Zhuo Xiaoxian's neck and exerted a little force. Zhuo Xiaoxian immediately began to struggle. "What are you?" Zhuo Tianxing and Old Man Yu immediately ran to the city lord. Their faces were filled with panic. Why was he attacking Xiaoxian instead? Zhuo Xiaoxian was also in disbelief. She yelled with all her might, "Godfather, what are you doing?" Meanwhile, the Black Tortoise realm. The poisonous mist inside Qin Feiyang's body had been devoured by the evil force. The 2 had returned to normal. However, the sudden scene outside made them unable to stay calm. "What is he doing?" the mermaid princess exclaimed. The city lord glanced at the sky and said calmly, "Qin Feiyang, Madman Mo, I know you can hear me. If you don't want Xiaoxian to die in front of you, come out now." What? He was using Zhuo Xiaoxian to force them to come out? Qin Feiyang and the others were filled with disbelief. How cruel was this guy? Don't be rash. Zhuo Xiaoxian is his goddaughter. Besides, judging from his concern for Zhuo Xiaoxian, I don't think he's that cruel. Looking at the furious madman, Qin Batian immediately placed his hand on his shoulder and comforted him. However, before Qin Batian could finish his sentence, the city lord spoke again. "Don't think I'm putting on an act." Following the words, the city lord waved his hand. A stream of god force appeared and severed one of Zhuo Xiaoxian's arms. Fresh blood gushed out like a stream. Damn it, Madman's eyes turned bloodshot as he yelled, "Old Qin, send me out." Outside, Zhuo Xiaoxian's face twisted in pain. She never thought her godfather, who loved her the most, would be so cruel to her. Besides, what exactly was going on? They were still having a pleasant conversation before they left the hall. How did it turn out like this in such a short time? Could that black bloodstain be Big Brother Qin and Little Lunatics? Was the wine poisoned? On the side, Zhuo Tiansheng and Elder Yu clenched their teeth in anger. City Lord, what are you doing? We can think of another way. Zhuo Tiansheng blurted out in a panic. Shut up. The City Lord glared at Zhuo Tiansheng, before he raised his head and continued, still not coming out? Finishing the sentence, the City Lord waved his hand again. Zhuo Xiaoxian let out a cry of agony as her other arm was severed, causing blood to pour out. Zhuo Tiansheng's heart was bleeding seeing this. He stared at the sky and begged, please come out. Otherwise, he'll really kill Xiaoxian. He even dropped to his knees and begged in desperation. I'll ask you one last time, do you want to come out or not? The City Lord's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He tightened his grip on Zhuo Xiaoxian's arm. Streams of blood immediately flowed out from the corners of Zhuo Xiaoxian's mouth. Her pale face looked extremely miserable and despairing. Whoosh! At that instant, two figures appeared, who were none other than Qin Feiyang and Maniac. At this moment, both of their faces were as dark as water. The City Lord glanced at the two and said with a calm smile, it seems like you really care about Xiaoxian. Let her go. Come at me if you have anything to say. Madman said word by word, his hands tightly clenched together. Got it. The City Lord nodded. As he let go of Zhuo Xiaoxian, a terrifying god force sprang toward the two. Don't! Zhuo Xiaoxian screamed as she dashed forward, ignoring the danger to her body. Xiaoxian. Zhuo Tiansheng's eyes widened in anger. Elder Yu let out a furious roar too. The City Lord's cultivation was so terrifying. How could Zhuo Xiaoxian possibly resist his god force? Qin Feiyang and Maniac were startled too. They tried to stop it, but it was too late. Zhuo Xiaoxian was like a miserable moth, flying toward the divine power. The City Lord rose to his feet after seeing this. Bang! The god force collided with Zhuo Xiaoxian. Following a painful cry, Zhuo Xiaoxian's flesh was shattered into pieces. Xiaoxian, how could you be so stupid, so stupid? Zhuo Tiansheng cried out in grief. Elder Yu burst into tears too. Qin Feiyang yelled, her soul is still here, there's still time, quick. Zhuo Tiansheng and Elder Yu shuddered. They raised their heads and immediately dashed toward the source of the voice. However, the crazy man reacted even faster. Before Qin Feiyang finished talking, he had already dashed out, raised his arm, and grabbed towards Zhuo Xiaoxian's soul. The god force turned into a terrifying ripple. The tables and chairs were shattered into pieces. Maniac's flesh was shattered too. Chapter 3053. However, the madman was not afraid at all. His eyes were filled with determination as he grabbed Zhuo Xiaoxian's divine soul. At this moment, there was only a wisp of Zhuo Xiaoxian's divine soul left. Because her cultivation was too weak, she could not hold on for too long under the fluctuation of divine power. After grabbing Zhuo Xiaoxian's last wisp of divine soul, he quickly retreated to Qin Feiyang's side. In the process of retreating, his body had also reached its limit and shattered, leaving only his divine soul. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and quickly brought the two divine souls into the Black Tortoise realm. Wait. But then. The City Lord spoke. Qin Feiyang looked up at the City Lord and said, they've already become like this. Are you still not willing to let go? The City Lord glanced at Qin Feiyang, then at the divine soul that Qin Feiyang was protecting. With a wave of his hand, the fluctuation of divine power dissipated. Then, He took out a wooden chair and leaned on it as if he was exhausted. Zhuo Tiansheng and Old Man Yu looked at each other and stood aside silently, not daring to say a word. Qin Feiyang stared at the city lord and did not speak again. The madman's divine soul also turned into a human form and carefully protected Zhuo Xiaoxian's last wisp of divine soul in his hand. Fine. After a long while, the city lord shook his head and sighed. Qin Feiyang and the others looked at the city lord in surprise. The city lord looked up at the madman and sighed, "For you, Xiaoxian even sacrificed her own life, and for saving Xiaoxian, you did the same. Are you sure you love each other deeply? I also believe that you can give Xiaoxian happiness." This, Zhuo Tiansheng and Old Man Yu looked at each other and said suspiciously, "Are you doing this to test their feelings?" No. If he didn't risk his life to save Xiaoxian's last wisp of divine soul, Xiaoxian would really die. Because I never thought that Xiaoxian would be willing to sacrifice herself for him. I underestimated Xiaoxian's feelings for him. The city lord shook his head. So now? The two were suspicious. They've moved me. The city lord smiled faintly. Hearing this, Qin Feiyang and the mad scientist looked at each other with joy in their eyes. Zhuo Tiansheng and Elder Yu were the same. But then, Zhuo Tiansheng and the other two became nervous. The city master clearly wanted to help Madman and Xiaoxian, but how was he going to explain this to the Vice Alliance master? One had to know. The Vice Alliance master had given a death order. If they didn't kill the two of them, they would die. Are you happy now? I'll let you and Xiaoxian be together. But let me tell you, if you dare to bully Xiaoxian, I won't let you off. The city lord stared at the madman and said gloomily. I don't know how to. Madman shook his head. All right. Take Xiaoxian and leave. Don't come back, ever. The city lord waved his hand. Thank you. The madman bowed and looked at Qin Feiyang. However, Qin Feiyang did not immediately bring the two of them to the Black Tortoise realm. He sized up Zhuo Tiansheng and Elder Yu for a moment, then looked at the city lord and asked, "Is there something you're unable to say? This has nothing to do with you." The city lord shook his head. "Tell me, I might be able to help." Qin Feiyang said. The city lord shouted, "I already said it has nothing to do with you. What are you still talking about? Get lost." Qin Feiyang smiled helplessly and immediately brought the madman and Zhuo Xiaoxian's soul into the Black Tortoise realm. It really scared us to death. Fortunately, it was a close call. The mermaid princess and the others surrounded them with a smile on their faces. Outside, the city lord also waved his hand and the barrier dissipated. However, in his mind, the Black Tortoise realm never left. "I told you to get lost, didn't you hear me?" The city lord said angrily. Qin Feiyang sighed and could only leave with the Black Tortoise realm. Early the next morning, a large number of guards rushed out of the city lord's mansion and went to the various city gates to post notices. The general content of the notice, Zhuo Tiansheng personally wrote the notice, severing his relationship with Zhuo Xiaoxian as father and daughter, and putting Zhuo Xiaoxian, Qin Feiyang, and Madman Mo on the wanted list. And there was a reward. The moment the notice was released, it immediately caused a huge uproar. Everyone in Wind Sea City knew that Zhuo Xiaoxian was the apple of Zhuo Tiansheng's eye. He was afraid that she would melt in his hands. But why did he publicly sever his relationship with his daughter? And, who were Qin Feiyang and Madman Mo? Did Zhuo Tiansheng sever his relationship with his daughter have anything to do with them? Everyone was puzzled. Naturally, this matter became a hot topic of discussion after meals. Similarly, Zhuo Tiansheng's wives and children were also very puzzled by this matter. As family, of course, they knew Zhuo Xiaoxian's position in Zhuo Tiansheng's heart. In their opinion, this was an extremely unbelievable matter. However, the arrest warrant had already been issued, and it would not be fake. Hence, they hypocritically went to ask about it, but in the end, what they received was Zhuo Tiansheng's roar and anger. The next evening, the city lord, Zhuo Tiansheng, and Elder Yu stood in the main hall, seemingly waiting for something nervously. Whoosh! After a while, a black figure appeared. This person was a burly man, about 2 meters tall. His upper body was bare, and his muscles were like dragons. He was full of strength. "Greetings, Lord Envoy." The three of them bowed. The burly man nodded, sitting on the chair above, looking down at the three of them, and said expressionlessly, "Tell me, what's going on?" "It's a long story." Zhuo Tiansheng spoke. The burly man glanced at Zhuo Tiansheng, his eyes slightly cold, and said, "I have time, tell me slowly." "Okay." Zhuo Tiansheng hurriedly nodded. That submissive attitude showed that the burly man's identity was not simple. "It's like this. Last night, we used the spirit-severing powder to kill Qin Feiyang and Madman Mo. The plan was also very successful. But what we never expected was that they actually had the antidote for the spirit-severing powder." Zhuo Tiansheng said. "Even if they have the antidote, can they escape from the hands of you three Dominator Realm experts? If that's all you have, then there's no point in keeping you." The burly man's eyes flashed with killing intent. "Lord Envoy, please spare us. This is all my fault. Originally, we wanted to use force to kill them, but at that moment, my unfilial daughter, Zhuo Xiaoxian, took advantage of our carelessness and saved them." Zhuo Tiansheng hurriedly said. "What?" The burly man suddenly stood up, and a murderous aura enveloped Zhuo Tiansheng. "Lord Envoy, please calm down. This is not old Zhuo's fault. He's also very angry. Moreover, early in the morning, he announced to the public that he has severed his relationship with his daughter, and even issued an arrest warrant for them. Old Zhuo's loyalty to our Rogue Cultivator Alliance is absolutely not a problem. Lord Envoy, please investigate." The city lord hurriedly cupped his hands. The burly man glanced at the city lord, then looked gloomily at Zhuo Tiansheng, and asked, "Why did your daughter save them?" "I dare not hide it from you, Lord. Some time ago, Madman Mo kidnapped my daughter, but I didn't expect them to develop feelings for each other. I'm really heartbroken. Lord, it's my fault for disciplining her. If you really want to punish me, I'm willing to accept it." Zhuo Tiansheng knelt on the ground, his face full of pain and self-blame. The burly man was silent for a while, then returned to his seat and said, "You are indeed responsible for this matter, but seeing that you are loyal to the Rogue Cultivator Alliance, I will not pursue this matter this time. Thank you for not killing me, Lord." Zhuo Tiansheng hurriedly thanked him. The city lord and Elder Yu looked at each other, a hint of a smile in their eyes. "Get up," the burly man said. Zhuo Tiansheng slowly got up. That pained look on his face could really make him an award-winning actor. The burly man looked at the three of them, and said, "I'm here on the orders of the Vice Alliance leader to personally deal with this matter. You must cooperate." Of course, of course." The three of them nodded. "All right then. Immediately send orders to all the city lords of the major cities to stop what they are doing and focus on tracking Qin Feiyang and Madman Mo's whereabouts. If there is any news about them, immediately report to me. Also, increase the reward. If the information reported is true, the reward will be a low-grade heaven-defying divine artifact. If the heads of these two are chopped off, the reward will be a pinnacle heaven-defying divine artifact." The burly man said. "Pinnacle heaven-defying divine artifact." The city lord and the other two were shocked. That was a terrifying divine artifact equivalent to a greater mastery ruler. Elder Yu bowed, and said, "Lord Envoy, if I may ask, who exactly are Qin Feiyang and Madman Mo? I don't know either. But this is the Vice Alliance leader's order. Don't say too much, just do as you're told. The burly man waved his hand. Yes. The three of them respectfully replied, then turned and left the hall. After the city lord closed the doors of the hall, his brows immediately furrowed. Elder Yu transmitted his voice, Lord, why do I feel that this matter is not as simple as it seems? Yes. They actually offered a pinnacle heaven-defying divine artifact as a reward. This has never happened before in our rogue cultivator alliance. Zhuo Tiansheng also secretly said. Then let's go ask Qin Feiyang and Little Madman. The Vice Alliance leader wouldn't do this without a reason. I'm guessing that it should be related to their origins. The city lord transmitted his voice. Then, is it good or bad for Xian, to follow them? Zhuo Tiansheng frowned, and a trace of worry crept into his eyes. You've already severed your father-daughter relationship, and even issued a bounty. Is this still important? The most important thing right now is to quickly make arrangements. After all, even if it's just a show, it has to look like it. As for Xian, let's just silently pray for her. The city lord smiled faintly. Sigh. Letting Xian, go with that little madman just like that, I really don't feel good. Zhuo Tiansheng was extremely angry. Then what can you do? Things have already developed to this point, just be more open-minded. As long as they're happy, it's fine. Besides, it's not like you won't be able to see them in the future. If you really want to see Xian, find a secluded place and send them a message. Anyway, just be careful and don't be discovered. The city lord laughed secretly. Zhuo Tiansheng smiled bitterly. To see his daughter, he actually had to be sneaky. Sigh. What kind of world is this? Alright, quickly go and make arrangements. Also, only the three of us know about this matter. Be sure to keep your mouth shut and don't leak it out. The city lord secretly warned. The two of them nodded, turned around, and quickly left. Chapter 30-54. Half a month passed in the blink of an eye. Another 15,000 years passed in the Black Tortoise realm. Xiaoxian, what are you thinking about? The mermaid princess came out with a basket of vegetables. She saw Zhuo Xiaoxian sitting in the courtyard absent-mindedly and asked with a smile. Zhuo Xiaoxian's cultivation was not strong, thus she did not need much time to repair her soul and body. However, Lunatic was different. He was still in seclusion to reconstruct his body. Sister-in-law. Zhuo Xiaoxian collected her thoughts. She stood up and smiled sweetly at the mermaid princess. Are you thinking about your family? The mermaid princess sat beside Zhuo Xiaoxian and asked while picking vegetables. I'm thinking about my father and foster father. I wonder how they are doing now. I want to ask them why they are doing this to me. Zhuo Xiaoxian lowered her head. She looked a little disappointed. Didn't I tell you that this is a test for you and senior brother Lunatic? The mermaid princess smiled. No one told Zhuo Xiaoxian the truth. If Zhuo Xiaoxian knew that her foster father, who had doted on her since she was young, almost killed her, she would be heartbroken. Even if it's a test, why can't I go home now that we've passed the test? They even said that I'm not allowed to go back. Isn't that the same as not acknowledging me as his daughter? I even sent a message to my father, but he ignored me. Zhuo Xiaoxian felt wronged. I think they have their own difficulties. You don't have to worry. Once Feiyang and senior brother Lunatic come out of seclusion, they will investigate this matter. Just stay here peacefully and take care of your body. When the time comes, you can give birth to a fat child for senior brother Crazy. The mermaid princess smiled faintly. Zhuo Xiaoxian blushed upon hearing this. She said, sister-in-law, why are you making fun of me too? Am I? I don't think so. The mermaid princess said. Zhuo Xiaoxian lowered her head and said, you and Qin Dage aren't in a hurry. Why should we? The mermaid princess said with a smile, we made a promise a long time ago. We won't have a kid first. Why? Zhuo Xiaoxian looked at the mermaid princess suspiciously. Because you, Qin Dage, are a busy man and have no time to take care of him. The mermaid princess smiled. Busy? Zhuo Xiaoxian was startled. She glanced at the castle and said, I don't think he's that busy. There are many things that you don't know, so you don't understand. You'll slowly understand in the future. Help me pick the vegetables. I'll make you a few delicious dishes later. The mermaid princess smiled. All right. Zhuo Xiaoxian nodded. The two women sat together as if they were a family. They chatted and laughed, and the atmosphere was harmonious. That was the atmosphere that Zhuo Xiaoxian liked. Outside. Days passed. The burly man in the city lord's mansion was getting more and more depressed by the day. Almost everyone in the city lord's mansion was busy all day long. Zhuo Tiansheng was the same, running all over the place every day. However, they still couldn't find the whereabouts of Qin Feiyang and the other two. There was no news from the other cities either. Could it be that the three of them had disappeared into thin air? Or had they left the eastern continent? He waited patiently. 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, for an expert at his level, not to mention a few years, even a few thousand years or tens of thousands of years was just a blink of an eye. However, he could wait. The Deputy Alliance Master seemed to be impatient. On this day, he received a message from the Deputy Alliance Master. The Deputy Alliance Master was stern and ordered him to find them as soon as possible. He had no choice but to urge the city lord and Zhuo Tiansheng. The two of them also looked helpless. If this person was determined to hide, how could they find him? There was no way to find him. Unless they turned the eastern continent upside down. However, the Itinerant Cultivators Alliance didn't have that ability. After all, the Demon Hall was the real overlord of the eastern continent. For example, they had no right to search the Demon Hall's territory, such as the Demon Tower. Besides, it was possible that the other party had left the eastern continent. Therefore, they could only wait for them to show up. The burly man was a little frustrated. He didn't care, but the Deputy Alliance Master was anxious. So, he personally took action and led people to search everywhere. Or set up a trap to lure Qin Feiyang and the rest to show up. However, all his hard work was in vain in the end. He had no choice but to wait quietly in the end. As for the Deputy Alliance Master's urging, there was nothing he could do. If he couldn't find them, he couldn't find them. He couldn't possibly pull them out of thin air. The Demon Hall. This is really interesting. Chu Yun sat in a hall, her bell-like laughter echoing non-stop. The hall master of the Demon Hall also pursed his lips into a smile. Can you stop laughing? Elder Hua stood opposite Chu Yun, looking at Chu Yun and the Demon Hall master speechlessly. It's funny to begin with. Look at these two brats. Not only did they cause chaos in the Itinerant Cultivators Alliance, but they also kidnapped Zhuo Tiansheng's daughter. I've heard enough about this Zhuo Xiaoxian. Not only is she very beautiful, but she's also very sensible. She's Zhuo Tiansheng's sweetheart. How can Zhuo Tiansheng bear to do that? Chu Yun laughed so hard that her chest heaved up and down. Elder Hua could not help but laugh. He said, I have to admit that these two brats are indeed quite capable. The Demon Hall Master asked, You've been following them for so long. How much do you know about them? This Qin Feiyang is calm and composed. He's a very good young man. However, he's a little shrewd. I feel like he's an old fox. As for this little lunatic, although he's a little eccentric, his character is really good. He's righteous and hates evil. Elder Hua's face was full of praise. The Demon Hall Master smiled and said, "There aren't many people in this world who can be praised by you like this. To be honest, I didn't take this little lunatic seriously in the past. I thought he was just a foil. However, when I observed him along the way, I realized that in terms of talent, he's actually not inferior to Qin Feiyang." Elder Hua said. "Is Qin Feiyang very talented?" Chu Yun asked. "Haven't you seen him before?" Elder Hua said with a smile. "It's true that I've seen him before. However, all I know is his divine art and his sovereign divine weapon are very powerful. As for his personal talent, it's really hard to say." Chu Yun shook her head. "Little Yun, what you said is true. No matter how strong an external object is, it's still an external object. What we need to see is their potential. Especially the power of law. If you can't comprehend the power of law, no matter how talented you are, you can only stop at the imperishable realm. People at the imperishable realm are useless in our sky cloud realm." The Demon Hall Master said. "I didn't see the power of law." Elder Hua shook his head. "Isn't that right? Without the power of law, what's so rare about it?" Chu Yun smiled disdainfully. "Perhaps they have the power of law, but they haven't used it in front of others?" Elder Hua said. The Demon Hall Master smiled and said, "Then let's see if these two are the talents we need." "What if they aren't?" Chu Yun asked. "If they aren't, then it's a bit of a waste for the sovereign divine weapon to be in their hands." The Demon Hall Master smiled faintly. Chu Yun and Elder Hua looked at each other. Naturally, they understood what the Demon Hall Master meant. The Demon Hall Master pondered for a while before looking at the two of them and said, "There's one more thing we have to investigate." "What is it?" The two of them were suspicious. Why does the vice leader of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance want to kill them so badly? Does he know something? The Demon Hall Master's eyes flashed. "That's impossible. Only the three of us and the Blood Hall know that Qin Feiyang and the others came from the lower realm. But we didn't tell anyone, and the Blood Hall didn't announce it either. Even the sea beasts in the Sky Cloud realm are forbidden from mentioning Qin Feiyang and the others. So the Rogue Cultivator Alliance doesn't know about it at all." Chu Yun frowned. "Then the problem is even bigger. Qin Feiyang and the others just came to the Sky Cloud realm. They haven't even seen the vice leader. Why did he order them to be killed?" The Demon Hall Master said. "Didn't I say that they want to kill one to warn the others?" Chu Yun said. "You really believe it? If they want to kill one to warn the others, is there a need to send someone to supervise them personally? There's a big problem here. And that Yun Xiang, he actually has the protection of a perfected sovereign's killing intent. We have to figure this out." The Demon Hall Master said. Chu Yun immediately looked at Elder Hua and asked, "You know all the perfected sovereigns in the Sky Cloud realm. Didn't you recognize the aura of that killing intent?" "No. The aura of this killing intent is very unfamiliar. I guess that this person is either deliberately concealing his aura, or he's an expert we've never seen before." Elder Hua shook his head. "Then I'd rather believe the former." Chu Yun shook her head. "How could an expert they've never seen before be possible? As the overlord of the Eastern continent, who didn't know the experts of the 4 continents in the Sky Cloud realm? Not to mention that it was a supreme existence at the perfected sovereign realm. But who was it that deliberately concealed his aura? Blood Hall? But if he was really from the Blood Hall, why did he hold back from attacking Qin Feiyang? It seems that our Eastern continent is really lively." Chu Yun's eyes flashed with coldness. In the blink of an eye. Outside, 50 years had passed. Boom. On this day, Inside the ancient castle, a terrifying aura suddenly burst out. The owner of this aura was Qin Feiyang. That's right. After 50 years of seclusion, Qin Feiyang finally stepped into the initial imperishable realm. 50 years outside was 1,000 years in the Black Tortoise realm. How long had it been? Even Qin Feiyang himself didn't know how many soul stones he had refined over the years. It was difficult to calculate now. However, when he broke through to the half-step imperishable realm, it took him almost 10 years. Now, it took him 50 years to break through to the initial imperishable realm, which was almost 3 times. Naturally, the soul stones he refined were more. Not bad. When Qin Feiyang walked out of the ancient castle, the little boy appeared out of thin air. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly, and then looked at the little boy strangely. What? The little boy raised his eyebrows. I'm curious. When I first saw you, you were only this big. Now that so many years have passed, you're still this big? You can't even grow up? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.